All right. Welcome everybody to Foundations of Programming. You may notice that this is a very small class. Uh, Foundations of Programming is typically very small. We average between 5 to 8 people, depending on the cohort. We have five, but the fifth one has yet to arrive. Um, and that's okay, right? Foundation programming was made to help service members, veterans, and their spouses prepare for our cohorts to increase the success rate of our students. Uh, but because it's also for active duty military service members, uh, it's not mandatory. So we hold it as a voluntary course for those of you who have the extra time and would like to ensure you guys are as best prepared for the cohort than the rest. Um, a lot of people that we get through here are still in the service, and unfortunately, chain of command does not always give them the time to, take time off or dedicate themselves to our classes as much as they would like. Typically, we can get away with, if they're coming through skill bridge, they can take those, 3 months for the course upon their transition. But it's very difficult to try and get them here additionally to foundation the program. But nonetheless, thank you guys for being here. Um, I will ask and highly encourage if you guys can keep your cameras on as much as possible. It helps me as an instructor to make sure that you guys are being receptive to what's being taught. When I see confused faces, I can understand like, okay, maybe they're not really understanding what I'm trying to convey. So if you can keep your cameras on, that's greatly appreciated. I understand sometimes we have family, we have distractions, we're eating dinner, and that's okay. You're more than welcome to turn off the camera. You have to go to the restroom and do something else. Um, so it's not a strict rule, but I encourage it that way. I can at least see the faces of who I'm teaching. It makes it easier for me as an instructor as well. If you are sitting in this room right now, congratulations. You are officially one of our students. You guys have been accepted to one of our programs, whether it's the immersive evening weekend or the DevOps program. So either one of those, you guys were probably accepted to them, which is why you are standing here. So congratulations, you made it through the first hurdle of your time in Platoon. I see Chase. I will be turning my camera on once I can figure out why it's not working. Thank you, Chase. When you guys ask questions, I will repeat the questions to ensure everyone's tracking what's being asked so I can answer the questions and we all understand the context, just so you guys are aware. All of the classes are going to be recorded and they will be available to you guys roughly between an hour after class. Once I close down Zoom, it takes a while for the video to download to my computer. And then I have to update it or upload it to YouTube, and that in itself takes some time as well. And then it takes a while for the video on YouTube to be available in a resolution that allows you to see the context of my screen. So within an hour after the class, you'll have access to any of the material that's taught. But nonetheless, welcome to Intro to Foundations of Programming, right? Class, as mentioned before in the Slack channel, is going to be from Monday to Friday from 5:30 to 9 p.m. This slide is very outdated. Class will be from starting today, the 6th of January, until the end of January. It's going to be essentially help you transition straight into the immersive program if that's the cohort that you are assigned to. If not, well, you would just wait until your cohort starts. But this class is designed to help you be as successful as possible with the immersive program. And the reason for that is because coding boot camps like this one, they're very heavy, right? We don't teach you all the extra fluff that you will learn in college. We teach you the meat and potatoes of what it means to be a software developer to get you ready for their workforce. Uh, and because of that, we have such a strict timeline to teach you enough for you to go out into the real world and be able to do this in a real world application. So it's such a heavy curriculum that a lot of the times our students tend to struggle, especially for the first month, because the first month is probably the hardest on our students. The first assessment that you take is notorious for being the one that kind of gives our students the most problems. So foundational programming was created to ensure that we alleviate that stress and the issues that you guys go through in that first month. There are no hard deadlines for any of the assignments that we're going to be covering. Uh, every day we should have something that we can work on when you guys get off, except maybe today and tomorrow, since this is very slow pace for today. Today is just really introduction and talking about how to be successful, right? You can bring any questions about the pre-work or programming that you might have. I um, you know, open the door for all that. If you guys have been working on anything, if you are doing any kind of side projects, if you have any questions between now and the end of our program, I'm here and available to you guys. It's not, unheard of for a student to reach out to me outside of work hours, and I respond to you guys. Uh, Now, I might not always respond immediately. That's because I do have a family and I have a toddler, but I try to get to you guys as soon as I can. Jason Bell says he couldn't find the PowerPoint slides. So the PowerPoint slides are going to be found in uh, the schedule. So in our Slack, you will find at the very top, you have your bookmarks, which will contain the schedule. And then here we have the pins where we have the Zoom channel and the GitHub repo for the curriculum. If you want to see the schedule, you go to bookmarks and click on the class schedule. I should have it where you guys can view it. I'm almost certain. This is actually from my computer, so this is not the one that I have online. Uh, if they ask you for permission, let me know and I will fix that. But that's where you'll find the schedule. And in the schedule for every single day, you'll see the hyperlinks. You can click on that and it'll take you to the PowerPoint slides for every single day. The 90% of the course is going to be taught through PowerPoint slides and then building off on that information. All our assignments are in the curriculum repo, so you can go to the curriculum repo and work on the assignments. Everything that we teach through the PowerPoints will direct you to the GitHub repo so you can work on the assignments for that day. So we will ask for feedback during and after this course to ensure that you guys are learning what you should be learning and you're not struggling. At the end of the course, I will administer a survey to hear from you guys your feedback about what we can improve and how helpful you think the program was for you. All the feedback I've ever received for Foundation of the Program has been extremely positive. Um, it's very common for students to go into their cohorts and then they're messaging me afterwards telling me how helpful it was, the foundation programming course. If it wasn't for the course itself, they would be completely lost, right? A lot of people tend to go in there and they don't realize how heavy it is. You said I don't have access to bookmark class schedule. Okay. Let's, it might have to do with a Slack thing. So I'm gonna go ahead and send it for now here. And then I will get it to you guys. Copy link. I'm gonna send the Slack channel so you guys can have access to it. But I'll fix that. I think it's a Slack issue. Schedule. There we go. Probably permissions issues that I have to take care of. No biggie. When you guys register for Slack, whenever you guys get the link for Slack, sometimes it puts you in a weird category, which gives us issue with what you have access to in Slack. So it's a little annoying, but I deal with it as we go. So the objective for the course is to better prepare students for our immersive program and everything else. It says request permissions. Okay, let's check it out. Give me a second. Oh. Share. Uh, 3 people like access. Okay, I see you guys. I'm sharing with Rachel, Tim, and Jason. I apologize for that, but you guys should all now have access. Go ahead and give it a try. Right on. Okay. Right. So the objective of the course is to prepare you guys for the immersive program or for any of the other programs you guys go into. The first assessment that you guys are going to encounter when you get into your cohorts is going to be the object-oriented program course, right? And it's very Python heavy. The course itself is taught, or that part of the course is taught in a week, and then you're given the assessment. And it can be a lot for beginners when they first start off to kind of understand the concept. It's not impossible, but it does make it very difficult for people. I myself, I forgot to introduce myself. My name's Rogelio, but you guys are more than welcome to call me Roger. Let me actually change my name on Zoom. I am a United States Army veteran. I served 8 years as a combat engineer. I was in Fort Bragg twice, and I was in Philly once. And upon my transition, I encountered Platoon very similar to how you guys did. I was coming through the VETEP program. Going to the website, I stumbled upon Platoon, and the reviews on Platoon were amazing compared to everything else, and it was a VETEP proof program, so I signed up for it, and Platoon got me to where I am now. I was able to leave the service, and after graduating from Platoon, I volunteered as a teacher assistant for one of the instructors. Um, they were fairly impressed with my performance. For some reason, the instructor before me that was teaching this course had to step down for personal reasons, and he was no longer able to teach this course. At the time, it was only going to be temporary. He was going to be gone for about 2 weeks. They reached out to me and asked me if I could fill in. And then after I completed the last 2 weeks, I taught it. He told our management that he could no longer do this, and they offered me the role permanently. Hey, and I've been teaching this course for the past year and a half, maybe a little under a year and a half. And here I am now, right? The the rate of people getting hired after Platoon is actually pretty high. Within 6 months, I think out of the 40 people in our class, I think somewhere around 70% already had a job within the first 6 months, which is like the goal to get obviously everyone to 100%. But a lot of people decide to go to college instead, right? They get out, they're like, I'm gonna take advantage of college, or you know what, maybe this wasn't for me. But for the other 70%, it was somewhere around 78, I think 78 or 74, decided to move forward with it, and they are currently working jobs as software developer. So the opportunities there, Platoon will get you guys from point A to point B, giving you the skills that you need to be successful and building your portfolio to make you more marketable. Yeah. Do I have any questions so far about our class schedule, the days or the times that we will be, teaching this?
Would you say that there's just like the foundations of programming is just kind of like to get everybody on the same basic level, at least to be more prepared and like do you think after completing this, it's going to be less of a strain on us for the actual immersive program?
150% yes. Right. So everything that we teach in the foundation programming course is actually stuff that you're going to see in the immersive program. Right. We are essentially dipping your toes into what you're going to be taught. Um, we are going to talk about, have you seen the schedule, right? we are going to introduce you to Git and GitHub, which tends to be a big issue. I just finished working with the immersive program that's going on right now, and they are in their last 2 weeks of the immersive program, and I still have some students that were struggling with Git and GitHub, right? And they're at the end of the course, right? And these were students that did not partake in foundational programming, and they just weren't comfortable with Git and GitHub. We're going to introduce you to HTML and CSS, which should be a little bit in your pre-work. The last time I looked at the pre-work, it was a lot of free code cap stuff, but we're actually going to be, teaching it here, building some small websites, and kind of showing you how it works. We're going to introduce JavaScript to show you how JavaScript ties into HTML and CSS to build your application. We're going to talk about APIs and how they work, CRUD applications, that goes into the website as well. We're going to have a small introduction to Python. For those of you who started off with JavaScript, you can start learning Python as well, because the programs that we have are written in both JavaScript and Python. So you're going to need to know both to be successful, right? There's such thing as a front end and back end, and we use different languages for both. Um, we're going to talk about classes and objects, essentially object-oriented programming. This is the part here that's probably the heaviest for students in the immersive program. And honestly, the word you're going to get the most bang for your buck in this program is these days of dealing with classes and objects. We're going to talk about importing files and using them, creating unit tests for our code. We're going to create a small game using Python. If you I can see some people here probably around the same age as me, if not a little bit older. Remember Space Invaders, or I think it was what was it called before? It was like Galactica or something like that. The old retro game, arcade
Yeah,
game.
Galactica is the game.
Yeah, we're going to recreate Galactica using Python. You'll be able to open up an interface and create a spaceship and create aliens and shoot them down. So we'll use our code, and I will show you how we can code that same game using Python code. So even if you have not learned Python yet, you'll have a basic knowledge to know enough to write the program with me. We're going to talk about data structures and data algorithms, which is a huge part for the interview process once you graduate Platoon. It's cool and all if you know how to create an application. That's what we want you to do. But for some reason, the software engineering world, the way that they test their new developers for jobs is through data structures and data algorithms. So essentially, coding challenges, right? They'll give you a challenge that you to solve. They're similar to the 3 challenges that you guys did for your application. We're going to be talking more about those and diving into different types of algorithms that you can use to solve these challenges. Those challenges are what are used for your interviews to ensure that they know that you are competent enough to code, right? And you need just copy and paste something into your application, right? So we'll be talking about that. We'll be talking about ASCII values, regular expressions, and then at the very end, if we get to it, we're going to redo the pre-work challenges that were given to you guys. This might have changed, so we might change this. It's all going to depend on honestly, the tempo of you guys, how receptive you guys are to the information. But for the most part, everything between lesson 17 and before, we'll be able to get through it all. This is kind of in the air. As I mentioned, classes from 5:30 to 9. Attendance is not mandatory. If Jason here is the only one that shows up, Jason and I are going to have one-on-one for 3 hours, or as long as he's able to, right? So whoever shows up, I'll teach you guys. If you guys are going to be, if it's only just one person, you only want to sit there for an hour or two, and we get through the curriculum quickly, then it is what it is. But this is very personal. It's just you and I. We're talking about code, learning code, and preparing for the immersive program. I think the most we've had in students were like probably 15 or 20, but it's dwindled throughout the years. All right. Well, before I continue, let's do some quick introductions. Just tell me who you are, your branch, if you're a family member, if you're still in the service, and what you do and what got you into programming. And I think we can start with Jason.
Do you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. I'm about to retire from the Air Force. I'm not in a technical, I was not, or I should say I'm not in a technical field. I'm doing weather support, which, I mean, it's not really related to coding at all. I haven't really been satisfied with my career. It's kind of what I've done the whole time, and I'm just looking for a different direction. And I feel like I've been interested in Code Platoon for a while. Like I was hoping I was going to be able to get into the Yankee program, but using SkillBridge, but my commander couldn't guarantee it. So I kind of had to time my retirement date, as far as worst case scenario, if I was going to like do a different do Zulu or, another type of session. But luckily, they granted me permission to come do Zulu. So
Awesome. Sounds good, Jason. Nice to meet you, Jason.
yeah,
Uh,
I was about to say like this month in January, like I mean, I'm not working any more shifts, but I'm still having to like handle like last minute military like out processing things like that. So my attention is a little bit split, kind of between, the foundations of coding class and military stuff, but I'm still going to do my best to, attend as many classes as I can.
and that's all I asked. I appreciate it. Thank you, Jason. No, absolutely. I was in the exact same boat. Uh, I unfortunately, when I was coming through in foundation of programming, it was probably in its second course. I wasn't able to attend in person, but I was watching the videos every day after the class was taught to ensure that I was better prepared, and it definitely helped. So I completely understand. We are very understanding because our course are directly for military members, service members, whether they're veterans or even their families. And now we just started accepting their children too, which is pretty cool. So we understand the struggles. A large part of our organization are veterans and previous Copeton alumni. So we've all been there, right? We've all been in the same boat that you guys are in now. I came through. I applied. Um, I understand. When I came through, we had 10 coding challenges, not three, and it took me 2 months to solve all 10. They only got harder, and I had to take it at my own pace. So I completely understand. All right, let's go with Tim.
Hi, Tim. Air Force, 21 years. I had my retirement ceremony today, actually. And
Congratulations.
thank you. Just I've been interested in programming for a long, long time. I've built applications through frameworks like Microsoft Power, Automate, and the Power Apps suite, but no formal training. So I'm really looking forward to this.
Right on, Tim. Thank you. Chase.
Yeah, Chase, obviously, I did 5 years in the Marine Corps. And then I got out. I was basically a radio maintainer. So when radios break down, I would do like micromin stuff or replace component cards and whatnot. Never really enjoyed that. Just got what I was told to do. And then I've always been like a little bit curious about coding. And then for about a year and a half, 2 years after I got out, I would tell myself, "Oh, I'm going to start it. I'm not going to start it." Eventually, I just, decided to go ahead and do it. So I have no formal training at all in coding, kind of learning from scratch. I'm excited. It's a nice challenge. Very intimidated, I would say. Very nervous about the course, just because there's so much to learn and it's very competitive field and whatnot. But super kind of excited to attend and challenge myself with learning coding.
Right on. Sounds good, Chase. Rachel.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Um, so my name's Rachel. Right now, I live in San Antonio. I'm in the Coast Guard. I was on a cutter for 2 years, and now I'm in an intel billet. What got me interested in this program was I worked on my master's in analytics, but mostly I did like the statistics side of that, so a lot of math courses. And not as much like coding. So I really just want to like, I've been exposed to Python and R through like the analytics stuff, but not really any software dev. And I feel like a lot of people that are looking for like data scientists and stuff want you to kind of have this as a background too, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I did a little bit of not specifically analytics or data science, but more data analysis. And it was super boring. I hated every part of it. Um, I worked with Accenture for a bit, and although I love the company, it was not for me. Software development is significantly a lot more fun than data. But sounds good. It's good to have you here, Rachel. And for those of you guys who mentioned, that you have no prior experience with tech, that's completely okay, right? We've had people here who, you know, barely knew how to navigate through a computer, and they thought they needed a brand new laptop or a brand new computer to, be here, and they went and they bought this whole setup because they just knew nothing about computers. But you do not need any of that. You don't need to have any prior experience to be successful. And to be completely honest with you, when it comes to programming, it's a lot of just problem solving, right? Just critical thinking. So if you think you're good at problem solving or in finding issues or in creating solutions for these issues, then you'll be very successful here. Programming is also very similar to languages. All right, so if you're bilingual or you know another language besides just English, uh, we've seen people who are linguists in the military who have come through Platoon, right? And they've been very, very successful. They're able to pick it up because at its core, a programming language is just how the computer talks, right? So you're learning how to speak to it. And the languages we use, specifically Python, are very human-like, right? Very relatable to English, right? Whenever you want to show something in your console, you use the print method, right? For those of you who know JavaScript, instead that's your console.log, right? For Python, it's just print, right? It's pretty straightforward, very verbose. So print this, right, and you can print out whatever you add in there. But all right. It's good to have you guys. Thank you for the introductions. Let's go ahead and move forward. So, once again, very outdated. A lot of the curriculum, when it comes to slides, I haven't really updated too much. I work more on the actual repo. But for your actual curriculum itself, as you may have already seen, hopefully you guys have access to it. I'm sure you should have it. But your repo, when you open it up, it should bring you to GitHub. If you guys followed along with the guided application, or if you were a part of the pre-work lectures with Guillermo, this should look very familiar to you guys. He should have also gone through the installation of your virtual machines. Can I get a thumbs up or a thumbs down if you have gone through the installation process for that? Thumbs up, thumbs up. Rachel, Chase?
Yeah, thumbs up. I did it.
Yeah, same.
That's awesome. That saved me so much of a headache. A lot of times that's like the biggest issue, trying to get people to do that. To copy a repository, which I'm sure, or I want to say I'm sure, I'm assuming you've done it before, but we'll do a quick walkthrough. To copy a repository, you would open up a terminal, right? I'm assuming you guys have done something very similar to this. You would figure out where you want to copy your repository into when it comes to your computer. And what you would type in would be git clone, and then you would press Control V to copy and paste something here. Well, in the repository window on your browser, if you click on the green button that says code, it should pop down a URL for you that you're going to copy to your clipboard. And with that being copied into your clipboard, you press Control V, and it should clone it into your computer. Now, after it clones it, what you're going to do is you're going to type in the word code, type in space, and then the name of that whatever you copied it, and it should open it up in VS Code. And we'll do a demonstration of that in a second. All right, but here is what the README should look like. We have from lesson 0 to lesson 15. Today is the introduction to foundation of programming. It's very, very light. There's not much when it comes to README on the curriculum. It's gonna be a lot of links or some empty files that you're going to work on. We do a lot of, here is the assignment, right? Give it a try. After you gave it an honest try, we regroup and then we walk through it. So we don't do much hand holding in foundations of programming because you won't really learn much. When it comes to coding, a lot of times you have to put in the time and the keystrokes into your keyboard for you to really understand what's going on. And we'll talk about why that is the way it is. But this is your curriculum. Every lesson, for the most part, should have its individual day. You might encounter a day or two where we'll still be on the same lesson due to how heavy some of these lessons are. There are going to be multiple assignments per day, and we'll be taking care of them every hour on the hour. We tend to take breaks every hour. We take a 10-minute break to ensure that you guys don't get burnt out. And another quick disclaimer, I am Mexican, right? English is my second language. So if you do not understand something that I say, please let me know and I will repeat it and maybe slow down my words to ensure that I am able to explain it successfully. We already did the install phase thanks to Guillermo, so we don't have to go through that. We continue moving forward. All right. So as I mentioned to you guys, when it comes to the terminal, we're going to talk about real quick how to run files, right? So if you went through the git clone, let me go ahead and make a quick directory for this called test. And we'll talk about the commands that I'm using here in a little bit if you guys aren't familiar with it. I popped into one of Guillermo's lectures and I saw him talking to you guys about Linux commands. So you should have somewhat of an idea, but if not, we will cover it today. But here is my empty directory that I created, right? It's test. I'm going to do git clone, and I'm adding that URL link from the GitHub repo. Once again, on the GitHub repo, you click the big green button that says code, and it'll show you a URL link. You copy that to your clipboard, and then you paste it into your terminal as such, and then you press enter. Right? You should get something very similar to this, where it's going to tell you that it's going to be cloning the repository into some kind of folder. Wherever you are in your terminal, that's where it's going to copy it into. You see here, I'm still within the test directory. If I use this command ls, that stands for list, it'll list out everything that's within this directory. And we now see that I do have the FOP directory in here. As I mentioned before, to open this up in VS Code, all you have to do is type in code, space, and the name of the folder you're trying to open up. For me, I'm trying to open up FOP. And if I press enter, it should open up a VS Code window for me. I already had this one opened up, so I'm going to go ahead and close it. You should have something very similar to this where you see all the folders from the repository in your VS Code. Now, what we are going to talk about right now is going to be the way that we run our files for Python and for JavaScript. So I'm going to go ahead and create a simple test file here. And this can be test.js, right? The name of the file doesn't really matter. When it comes to your files, the way that you end your file name is what's going to dictate what type of file you're working with, right? Because I'm going to work with a JavaScript file. I put .js. If this is a Python file, this will be .py, right? But this lets my my virtual machine know that this is a JavaScript file, so it knows how to run it successfully. And I'm just going to do something very simple here, like console.log hello. And there's two ways that we tend to run our programs. Now, one way is going to be using the run method, which for some reason, it's not appearing here on the top right. but we don't need it. You can also press the run up here, and you can run your program. We see run without debugging. It's going to tell me to choose how I want to run it. JavaScript uses what's known as Node to read JavaScript files, right? So here I'm going to click the node.js, and we see that it runs the file successfully and it prints out hello, right? It actually reads through the code and it runs my script, right? And a script is just a fancy word for instructions, right? It reads my instructions of code and it prints out the result. Now, the way that you guys are going to be running your files from here on out, and I hope you guys get used to it, is going to be using your terminal, right? So very similar to how I had this pulled up earlier from my computer, VS Code has something like that too. And it's here at the very bottom, right? If I type in ls, it's going to show me the directories I have within the FOP directory. And we see here it's from less than 0 to less than 15. What I'm trying to run is going to be my test.js file. And to run a JavaScript file, I mentioned to you guys earlier that it uses something called Node. So to do that in your terminal, you have to type in Node and then the name of the file. And we see here that it successfully runs my JavaScript file. For Python, something very similar. But instead of Node, you're going to use Python or Python 3, depending on how you have your virtual machine set up. So I do print hello here. When I try to run the test.py file, you're going to have to use either Python or Python 3. Now, if you did the install phase successfully, you don't need to add that 3. The install phase should have made you create an alias for your virtual machine to know what Python is without having to add that 3, right? Normally, you have to type in Python 3 and then the name of the file, test.py. And we see here it prints out hello with the capital H. It'll work, right? But to save you that extra split second to not have to type the 3 every single time, we added that to the curriculum. So we created an alias. So it's able to read Python as Python 3. And we can do the same with this command. So this is how you're going to be running all your files in VS Code, right? We now see here, I have the run button at the very top right. This will also work. Do not use it, right? Get used to working in your terminal using your Linux commands. All right. You also have the run code when you right click it, right? If I right click this file, I see run Python file in terminal. You could do it this way. Once again, do not do this. Use your Linux command. Now, learning how to code. You guys are here for a very specific reason, right? You probably want to learn how to create applications, but you don't know how to do it, right? There's been multiple ways that I did it, coming in. When I first started learning how to code, I didn't know where to begin. I didn't know the first thing about coding, right? So I went to my nearest library on post, right? I was still in the Army, and I got like 8 different books about coding from all different types of languages. Python, JavaScript, C#, C++, Rust, because I didn't know what the languages were for, right? This coding bootcamp is going to eliminate all that for you guys. So we're going to talk about, learning how to code and how to be successful with it. As I mentioned to you guys earlier, right, coding is not something that you can just watch a video and think you're going to understand, right? You have to actively code to learn how to code. And there's different ways that we all learn. One of them is by spaced repetition, which is something that I encourage you guys to take advantage of. If you guys are, just starting off, which that should be every single one of you guys, you're going to be hearing a lot of different words, right? You know, a lot of different words that you don't know necessarily what they mean. And it can become a very overwhelming, right? You know, words like variables, loops, for loops, functions, definition, you know, the primitive data types, right? You won't know what all these words are. They sound a little bit foreign to you at times. Values, and it's very important that you guys really understand the terminology, right? Because if you can understand it, then you have a good understanding of the basic principles, right? You can honestly do anything in coding with variables, for loops, and yeah, you know, that's about it. For loops and variables, you can do a lot in coding. But if you don't understand these basic concepts, it can become very frustrating. And it's not rare for me to see somebody early on into the immersive program, and I tell them, you know, declare a variable with, you know, an int of 5, and they're like, what's a variable, right? And if you don't understand the basic syntax, then you're gonna have a lot of issues, right? The biggest issue that you guys are gonna have as beginners is syntax errors, right? That means you didn't define a variable correctly, right? Or the structure of your code isn't right. You might be missing a colon somewhere, or you might be missing maybe the wrong indentation. Instead of, you know, indenting or putting your code 4 spaces, you made it into 3 spaces, and that will give you an error, right? You might be forgetting something very similar to that. If you're using JavaScript, you might forget a curly brace. All right, these are all syntax errors. You might not define a variable correctly. You might get confused with JavaScript and Python. In Python, we don't declare variables by calling it with lets or consts, right? Where JavaScript, it does that. So if you don't understand the structure, basic syntax, and the fundamentals, it can be cause you a lot of issues, right? It's going to save you a lot of time if you understand how to do these things. So what I recommend you guys use is this program called Anki, right? And essentially what Anki is, it's digital flashcards, right? Digital flashcards, if you don't have time to sit there and write down a bunch of stuff, you can go to Google and download Anki. It is free, and you can create decks to study, right? I can create a deck here, and I call this, let's say, JavaScript terminology, right? And then you can open up that flashcard and add stuff to it, right? We can add a new card. It opened it up on my other window, and we can say, how do you declare a constant variable, right? And then you can add the answer like const, my variable is equal to hello, right? And then you add it to your deck, right? And once you're done, you can close that up. You can open up the deck, very similar to how it's open up now. You can put study now, and you can run through these flashcards, right? Now, you'll read it to yourself, you answer it, and then you can show the answer to see if you got it correct or not. And then depending if you got it correct, you're gonna rate it from again to easy, right? If it's easy, you see here that there is a something here 4D. This means that this flashcard won't show up for another 4 days because it was so easy. That means you understood it, right? You got it. If you were good, but maybe it wasn't too easy, this will put a timer on this flashcard to not appear for another 10 minutes. Hard for 6 minutes, and if you didn't get it right, you can put again. You have some other stuff here too, but let's go ahead and do good, and you continue going through the flashcards, right? And the reason why I show you guys this is because as you go through the Foundations of Programming course or even the immersive program, class is going to last about 3 to 4 hours, right? And they're going to be dumping a lot of knowledge. Now, you will have the option to code along, or you can just sit there and watch, or you can take notes, right? when I was coming through, I attempted to code along with the instructor, and I got some fat fingers, so I kept fat fingering my keyboard, and I would make a typo, and my code would be a mess, and I would spend the next 5 minutes trying to debug it. By then, the instructor already moved on 2 subjects ahead, and then I would be lost. So that wasn't viable.
I was about to say, even with a Git clone, I kind of noticed, like, trying to code along, I was missing out on things. So yeah, I think I'd probably just follow along.
Right, and that's the next thing, right? So that leaves you with like, let me just follow along. But then what happens? As I mentioned to you guys before, if you guys don't actually code, you're not going to learn anything. You will have time. So the way that these programs work, specifically the immersive program, classes from 9 to 11. Sometimes class might overlap that time. You'll have to come back after lunch and continue with the lecture. Lunch is from 11. Oh, my bad. Class from 9 to 12. Lunch from 12 to 1:30. Right, so we would come back at 1:30 and then continue class if we didn't get to cover everything. But typically, if we did cover everything, individual time or group work is from 1:30 to 4:30. So that's when you would go back and do the assignments and actually learn. But what was happening is that for me specifically is that I would not understand anything. And at the time, the instructor was taking a little bit too long to upload the videos, so I had to download some kind of screen recording software. And then the moment class ended, I started watching the video, and I ended up rewatching the entire lecture every single day, and that wasn't very productive. That's what worked for me. That's what I was able to get through. People have other ways they learn. I had to rewatch it and go step by step, pause it. I recommend take down notes in this fashion, right? And honestly, if you create a deck as the lecture is going, at the end of the lecture, go to the deck, right? Every morning you wake up, it doesn't hurt to spend 10 minutes to go through your Python terminology, right? JavaScript terminology. If you want to make something specifically just for functions, do something just for functions or just for loops. Do something very similar to that. That way you can stay up to date or up to on your skills to ensure that you are good to go, right? Because it's very easy to forget stuff, right? Everything that you learn can be very perishable, right? And I'm sure you kind of saw that a little bit in the military. There's so much to learn that at some point it's very easy to forget it if you don't reference it or practice it. We tend to always have to revert back to the field manual to ensure that we are up to date with what we're teaching or learning or doing or planning for. Everything that we learn here is very perishable, specifically software development, right? Software development is such a big scope of things, right? It goes into many things. You can have front end, you can have back end, and for both of those, you have different frameworks, different languages, different applications, right? You have data. There's game development. There's mobile applications, mobile game development. There's so many different routes, and for all these, there's different types of software you can use, and there's different ways to use this software. When I dabbled in game development a little bit too, the game engines I was using had their own built-in language that you had to learn, and technology is constantly expanding. Right, software engineering, software development is not a profession where you will ever be 100%. There is always something new to learn. Right, we're always going to the next best thing, and always improving ourselves. So Anki is a great tool. Definitely use it, take advantage of it. If not, if you're more about just having a notebook and take down notes on your own, that's good too. But spaced repetition and active recall. So what's active recall? Well, have you ever spoken to somebody and as you're talking to a person, you end up remembering something? Right? That's what active recall is. And the method that I'm about to talk about is called the rubber duck method. This is actually very common, right? It's very common for new developers or even senior developers to have something like this, as you see on the screen, a rubber ducky, right? An inanimate object, sorry, English is hard, that you can have in front of you and you just speak to, right? Speaking out loud and describing the process, explain your code, will end up making you recall something that you might have missed or forgot. If you're stuck on something, it's always good to just kind of talk it through out loud. This is a good way to learn as well, and to help you fix some issues. Right, so it's not uncommon to have somebody with a rubber ducky where they're speaking to help them remember something or recap something they might have forgotten. So two very good, helpful ways to learn and to use as you go through the program. Now, I know it sounds a little funny, like, this dude just told me to talk to your rubber duck, like, what's going on? It works, I promise you. I tap in with not specifically a duck, but maybe talk to my friends or a colleague, and I'm speaking to them of my code, and then I hit a eureka moment. I'm like, oh, dude, that's what I missed. And you go back and you fix it. All right. Another thing when it comes to coding is don't spend too much time in front of your computer. Right? It's good, right, to put in the work, but what you'll come to find is that you end up stepping away from your computer, and you go to bed, and you're laying in bed with your wife, husband, whatever floats your boat, and you're just thinking about your code, and then you find a way to solve the issue that you've been working on all day that you couldn't solve. Or after a good night's rest, you come back and the issue that you were struggling with, or maybe the coding challenge you were working on that you cannot solve, somehow you finish it in 5 minutes, right? So it's always good to make sure that you don't spend too much time on your computer. Know when to step back, and be able to let your mind kind of soak in all the information you took in, and make sense of it, right? You do most of your learning when you're sleeping, believe it or not. We talked about the Anki class demo. Reset your forgetting curve every day, right? This goes hand in hand with your Anki deck, right? And here's not very accurate, but somewhat of a description of how the forgetting curve works, right? It kind of goes back to when you cram when you're in college, right? Trying to learn everything the night before a test. You're less likely to remember it a week later if you are trying to cram it all in one day. It might help you in the short term, but it won't help you with your long-term memory, right? And a way to avoid that is resetting that forgetting curve, revisiting the same subject again, using your Anki deck, checking out your notes to ensure that you haven't forgot what you've learned the week prior. Once again, reiterating the course itself, the immersive program is very heavy, right? I want to say every 2 weeks, you probably go on to another topic. You start off with like object-oriented programming with Python. You do a little bit front end. You work on Flask, and then you go to your back end. And then you go to databases, and you're constantly moving to the next subject. You come to find that you get to the course right for personal projects, and you might have forgotten a lot of stuff that you learned the first month, if you're not keeping up to date with everything that was taught, right? So make sure that you guys are resetting that forgetting curve and revisiting previous material that's being taught to you, so you can ensure that you don't forget it. Two qualities you must develop, right? You got to put in the work. Going back to coding, right, and not being behind your desk. You're not gonna learn if you're just watching, right? If you're not behind your desk and actively putting code on your screen, you're not gonna learn, and that's the simple truth of it. You are more than welcome to to slack off if you guys want. Maybe not the best way of putting it, but when I was coming through, there was one thing in my head, and it was like my biggest stressor was, this is how I'm gonna bring food to the table once I leave the military, right? And that was my biggest motivation. I had a newborn. Me and my spouse were struggling with this newborn. I was transitioning out of the service. Granted, I could have stayed in, but I was missing so much time away from my newborn son, and it wasn't very good for my family, and I did not want to miss holidays. I didn't want to miss my son's birthday. You know, I was on the border of Ukraine when all that stuff was going down. I did not want to miss out anything more. You know, we didn't know how it was gonna go, so I had to move out of the military, right? And I had a transition. And my biggest struggle was that this needs to work. I need to make sure that whatever I'm doing here pays off, right? So I was putting in that work, right? I would spend 8 to 10 hours a day just in front of my computer. I would be up all night coding. Maybe it wasn't the most effective because at one point I was getting burnt out, but I was putting in the work. So it all comes down is how much do you want this, right? No one's gonna do the work for you. You're not going to just magically learn something if you're not trying it out or working on it. So you need to put in the work, right? So right now is not the time for you guys to be relaxed, right? And just maybe spend 20, 30 minutes for your computer. Right now is the time to grind, right? Until you get that first job. And then you can relax, right? But between, you know, the time now that you guys are coming to the program and by the time that you guys graduate and start getting your interviews, right? This is the time to grind, right? You know, speaking to your family, like, hey, like this is important, right? I need to be as successful as possible. I need to ensure that I am the best version of myself to ensure that I have something by the time I graduate, right? So no one's gonna get these interviews for you. No one's gonna be writing these applications for you. No one's gonna be helping you with the coding challenge in the interview. So you need to make sure that you are as prepared as possible. Platoon will help you reach that point, but you know you can only take a horse to water. You can't make them drink. And we encounter a lot of students like that too, right? Where they just aren't working the assignment. They say they're behind. I got to leave for whatever. I can't be in class today, and which is fine. You know, you get a certain amount of absences, but at the end of the day, it doesn't hurt the instructors. It's gonna hurt you guys. So make sure that you guys put in the work, not just for you, but for your family. And then the next one's gonna be the belief that you can do it. Right. This is very underrated. You know, a lot of us come from broken households, right? No father figure, maybe no mother, or both, right? Low income housing. No one told us that, you know, we were good enough. Before I went to the military, one of the reasons why I went to the military is I generally thought that I was not smart, right? I didn't want to go to college because I thought I was going to drop out. I always wanted to do software development or coding in general, but I always felt like I wasn't smart enough for it. And it wasn't until I joined the military, where you know I grew up, matured, I fixed all my bad habits. I did college on the side. Once I got through my first college class, I realized this isn't as bad as I thought it was. I think I can actually do it. I came to the program, and I've been very successful with it. Um, and it made me realize that I'm a lot more capable than what I initially thought. Right? I knew nothing about coding as well. I was self-taught for 6 months before the program, right? And what you guys are going to encounter is a lot of imposter syndrome, right? And I hate asking, oh, do you guys know what imposter syndrome is? Because I hear it in every meeting. I'm gonna go ahead and assume that you guys know, right? Because I think we've all heard it enough. But you know, you think that maybe you don't belong here, right? You're not good enough. You're not understanding it. You think that everybody else understands it, but you don't. That's not true. I promise you. Right? On these one-on-ones, I see everyone's freaking lost. That's okay, right? We all have different things that we struggle with, our weaknesses, and we're not all gonna learn the same, right? But closed mouths don't get fed, right? If you don't speak up, if you don't say that you're struggling, if you don't reach out to the instructor, then we can't help you. All right. I just finished teaching the Guided Application Program a week ago. I think I saw Tim there once. Right. You know, some people would laugh. By the end of the course, I had 7 people. I started off with like 43. And then I put in the I administered a survey afterwards. And a lot of the comments I got was I did not know what was going on. Right. I didn't feel like I learned anything. If you guys had go back to watch any of the videos, if you added up the amount of times that I sat here in silence after asking if anybody had any questions, right? Does anybody, you know, is anybody confused? Does anybody want me to explain it in a different manner? You can probably add up all that time I sat here in silence for like an hour, easy, right? I would sit here for a minute or two, make it awkward until someone asks a question, and no one would. Closed mouths don't get fed, and by the end of it, people want to say like, I was lost, I didn't know what was going on, but no one asked anything, right? I established one-on-one sessions out of work. I wasn't even getting paid, and a handful of people showed up, but even some people that signed up didn't show up. So, you have to put in that work, right? No one's going to show you, how to code. And they're not going to put that knowledge into your head. We'll teach you guys, but if you guys aren't, showing up, and believe in yourself, then you're not going to be successful. So know that every single one of you can do it. The people that don't make it to the cohorts, from what I've seen, are people that end up missing class, right? They end up not showing up. Missing class is okay, but at a certain point, as I mentioned, it's a fire hose of information. If you're missing 2, 3, 4 days of class, that is class that you have to go back and review on your own, right? Watching the videos. As I mentioned, classes from 9 to 12. That's a lot of time, right? You think you have time in the evening once your family's home and your kids are there? Like, people tend to fall behind because of that. And these are the people that see they're not successful, right? And then they end up being discouraged, or they feel like, because they're falling behind, that's a domino effect. Now they're not understanding the information. Now the instructor is 2 days ahead, but you're still dealing with an assignment from last week. Now you feel like you don't belong there. Every single one of you guys can do it if you put these two things into your daily life. All right, put in that work and believe in yourself, because every single one of you guys can do it. And Sheila Buff, I gotta remove this. Very cringy. Imposter syndrome, thinking you don't belong here. I generally think you can teach a monkey how to code, right? It's not a difficult thing. It's just putting that work. Every single one of you guys can do it. Kids are learning how to code at 5, 6 years old. It's becoming a very common thing in other countries like China, India. They teach little kids how to program at a young age. I see these videos. It's just astounding to see what these little kids can do. They're writing programs that I was struggling with when I was coming through. Every single one of you guys can do it. I don't think there's a single person here or anywhere that cannot be successful in coding. It's just putting that work in time. You'll get it eventually. David Goggins, everyone hates his picture every time I show it. I don't know why there's so much hate on the guy. Your stall fest should be complete. All right. I know that was a lot of talking. I told you guys the first day or two, specifically, honestly, just today, is very light. A lot of just talking and introduction. But we're going to go ahead and take a 10-minute break. Time is 6:33. Let's go ahead and come back at 6:43. All right. Let's go ahead and continue with today's class. So we finished the small introduction. Hopefully that answers any of your questions. Before we continue, does anybody have anything they want to talk about in regards to the introduction, what to expect, the schedule, the program at all?
I guess, do you have anything to say about, I guess, like after Code Platoon, like, I mean, guidance when it comes to finding a job and just keeping your skills up?
Yes. Guidance, keep your skills up. The guidance you'll get after Code Platoon is career services. They help you get a job. When it comes to keeping your skills up, that's on you, right? Granted, you still have access to everything else, right? You're still gonna have access to the curriculum, right? You still have access to all the videos. I mean, all the videos are public. You will be added to an alumni channel, so you can speak to the rest of the alumni. I don't know how many people are in there. There's a lot of people. Give me a second. Let me check. There are like 600 people in our alumni channel. All successful software engineers. They are constantly talking there. People go to hackathons all the time. People they went to the cohort with. When I graduated, I was like signed up for jobs, putting job applications, and one of my biggest issues was like every time I created a new job tracker in Excel, I always stopped using it. I was like, God, like I can never find it, or I didn't like the layout. So I was like, you know what? I know how to write applications. Why don't I do something to fix this? So I did, and I created a quick website in like 2 days for it. It's pretty cruddy, if I'm being honest. But I was like, I can create something to do this. Um, just so I have somewhere to go. Let's say jason@jason.com. I didn't even add anything crazy here. But this is a real website that I have. And you have something like this where you have your library, you can add a tracker, and you can do like job tracker. And then you can open up that tracker and add a job like software engineer at Google. The day you apply to by default is the day that you're doing this. Apply, reject it, under review, contact information, and then save. I was like, you know, why am I working on a dumb Excel sheet that like dude, I wrote like 4 different Excel sheets. I'm like, I'm just gonna go create a small website for this and just do that. And I've had this for a year. Like I said, it took me 2 weeks. I'm sorry, not 2 weeks, 2 days to do this. Um, I'll be transparent. It took me 2 days to get up to speed because I have forgotten a lot of stuff. I was like, I should probably, touch up on this. So about 2 days of research and messing around, and then 2 days of actually like coding the application and getting it live. My domain, I just it renewed. I think on the first. It's like $15 for my domain name. There are some cheaper ones like $8 a year, but this one specifically cost me like $15. But yeah, and it cost me like 40 cents to keep it running every month. So like I just made a website, but you can do stuff like that, small little projects, and then you can add them to your portfolio. And like, hey, yeah, you want to visit something I've done, you can go here, and it's a deployed website. Interviewers eat this up. Like a deployed website, they eat it up, even if it's something simple, a very simple website, dude. For them, when they see that you went through the entire life cycle of developing and deploying a website from start to finish, they eat it up, right? Because a lot of college students don't do this, right? When I got an internship when I graduated, I was in this internship with 20 other people. I think I was the 21st person. 20 other people. They were intimidated by me. And I don't say that to like boast in any kind of way. These guys were college students. They were juniors, seniors in college. And this was like an internship that I got thanks to my connections with Platoon. They knew the people there. And for some reason they sent like a large email with everyone attached to it, and they had like who they were and like their background. And I'm good friends with them now. We have like a group chat that we talk. But they told me after they got to know me, we were in the internship. They're like, hey Roger, like, yeah, I'm gonna be completely honest with you, dude. Like, when they sent us this email before the internship started, I saw you on this list, and I saw like your portfolio, or especially my description of it. What I've done, how many applications I've done, my experience, my languages, my frameworks. Are like I thought to myself like, oh man, it's a bunch of tryhards in this internship. Like I'm not gonna get a job from this. Like, cause we're dealing with people like this, and I was the only one in that category with all these other college kids that were doing either computer science or somewhere in that field who had done culinary, but they didn't have anywhere close of a portfolio that I had or the experience that I had. They didn't even know how to deploy a website. Interviewers eat this up. I'm telling you, they eat it up. And then you guys are veterans or military, forget about it, right? So, something simple like this, really good. They love it, especially if you put it on your application. A lot of applications you have like additional websites or personal websites or whatever, and you can add the links there. And the reason why it's so good is because you're gonna be told to put your GitHub portfolio, I'm sorry, your GitHub link on your resume, because that's something that we use to demonstrate what we've created. But realistically, this team, this recruitment team, depends how big the company is. It might be 5, 10 people or less, significantly less. It might be 2 people doing this. And they might have hundreds or thousands of applicants. If you think they're going to go through every single software developer's GitHub and go through all your files and read your code, you're crazy. They're not doing that. They're on a timeline. They have additional work that I have to do. Like a lot of times, the people are interviewing are software engineers, mid to senior roles, and they're doing this on the side because they have to help. They have to have some kind of board to review some their skills. Some HR dude isn't going to know what the heck you're showing them, so they have software engineers there. If you think they're going to go through hundreds of thousands of applicants' code, you're crazy. They're not doing it. They don't have time for it. They say that people average like 7 to 8 seconds on their resume, right? And that there's a specific way that you have to make your resume, and you guys will go through all that when you go to Platoon. We have resume coaches who are specifically, their role is to do this for you guys. So they'll help you transfer your skills, military. I see you smiling, Jason. I'm assuming this is very awesome for you.
I'm just saying that because it's like a whole adult life. I've been in the military, so I mean, the civilian world's a little intimidating.
Yes.
Like afterwards, like where do I even begin? That kind of thing.
They're gonna show you exactly how. You have 2 hours of accumulated time with the resume coaches. If you want to break out your sessions with your resume coach for 4 different sessions, you can do that. You get 2 revisions. So you give it to them, they'll tell you what to update, you revise it, get back to them, revise again, and then you should be good to go. And then afterwards, after you're done with the resume coaches, our career services are always there available to help you with your resume. So many times I've gotten a new job I was applying to, and I hit up our career services and they're like, hey, this is the job I'm applying to, description, does this look good? And they'll give me back like, hey, change this, maybe reword this, yada yada. So don't worry, we got you, Jason. All right, you too, Tim. 21 years in the Air Force. You guys are good. But yeah, this is a good way to stay up on your coding, Jason. Right, a website like this for something simple, right? There's nothing crazy. It took me 2 days. That's not bad, and that's enough to cover everything from start to finish of the full cycle of your full stack application.
I have a quick question regarding that.
Yes.
Like for example, for this website you created, did you create that while you were currently attending Code Platoon, like briefly after?
After, like 2.5 months afterwards, I think.
Okay.
I will show you guys my specific profile so you see it, but it's a bunch of decline, so I'm not gonna do that. Put myself in a bad spot. But yeah, so you can definitely do something very simple like this. It's not hard, and honestly it's great, right? It ensures that you remember everything. Because don't be surprised if they give you a piece of code and they tell you to explain to you, for you to explain to them what the code is doing. Right, I've had that where they give me already a pre-built directory of code, and they're like, what is this doing line by line? And I had to break it down, and if I wasn't up to date on my React or Django, I'm like, I have no idea what I'm looking at. And it happened, and it's gonna happen to every single one of you guys. Go a month without coding, you're gonna forget a lot. So you have to stay up to date as you go through the interview process in applying to ensure you don't make a fool out of yourself in this coding interview. Does that answer your question, Jason?
Yeah.
Right
Yeah,
on.
yeah, that does. Thank you.
All right, cool. So, our next lesson is gonna be our terminal, Git, and GitHub. So once again, I'm sure you guys saw a little bit on this with Guillermo. We'll talk more about it. But what is a terminal? Right, essentially, it's a place where you can type commands that cause inaction. Everything that you do in your computer can be done through your terminal. Right, the terminal just gives you more functionality. Right, the reason why we have stuff like your desktop icons and like this fancy little browser is to make it accessible for your everyday, person, right? Human. Because not everybody knows how to navigate this, right? I'm sure you've probably seen this before when a long time ago, you're like, oh no, I don't want to break my computer, so I don't want to test this, right? Everyone feels like that because they don't know what this does. It almost looks like something like in a hacking movie when you first start looking at stuff like this. But everything that you do on your computer, you can essentially do the same thing with your terminal. And we're going to use the CLI, your terminal, your command line interface, to do a lot of stuff during the cohort. We're going to use it to open up files, move files, and navigate through our virtual machine. And what you call it? This also helps us to ensure that we're all on the same page, right? Because we have people that have Mac, we have people that have Windows. If you're a Windows user, you should have downloaded Ubuntu in your Stallfest, and this allows everybody to use Linux commands and be on the same page to teach the same thing. All right, so CLI versus the GUI. What are they? What is the differences? Well, essentially, they're the exact same thing. This is just a what's the word I'm looking for? A non-scary version of this, right? If I wanted to open up Safari, you could do that through your terminal, but the average person doesn't know how to do that or won't remember all these different commands. So we create a graphical user interface, a GUI, to allow the average person to work the internet, to use their computer, right? The browser, this is essentially a GUI, right? The VS Code, all this is a GUI. This is all a graphical user interface. All this stuff, right? That is what all these applications really are. Here are the two different terminals that some of you guys might be using. You have your Mac, right? And your Windows, if you're using Ubuntu, they're the same thing, guys, right? You can do the exact same thing. We use Ubuntu specifically so we can all be on the same page, but you should be able to reach the same location. If you have a terminal, you should be able to do something like command, right? And you can open up a command prompt. I have it pinned on my taskbar. If you have Ubuntu, you should be able to have the option of a down arrow that lets you switch between the different command shells. Click Ubuntu. You can even set the settings for what's going to be the default that opens up, right? Default profile Ubuntu. So you can set that up as well. But you're going to be using this a lot every single day during the cohort. So just pin it to your taskbar. It makes it easy.
I have a quick question. Are we supposed to be seeing your screen right now?
Yes, you are.
I
Thank
can't.
you.
I don't know if anybody else can.
No, man, that's embarrassing. Okay. Yeah, I was talking. Thank you, Chase. I might do that a lot
thanks.
more often. So please do not hesitate to stop me and say, Roger, you're not sharing anything. Get it together. But yeah, so we talked about the command line interface and the GUI. We talked about how the browser essentially is a GUI. Your VS Code is a GUI. Everything on your computer has some kind of user interface for us to interact with. You have the two different versions, whether you're on Mac or on Windows. They should be the exact same thing as well. I talked to you guys about your command prompt, right? If you type in command prompt, you're able to open it up. You should have a down arrow that lets you choose different types of PowerShell or command prompts, command line interfaces, right? You can adjust your settings. So your default is Ubuntu. If you're on Windows, and then I have my pin to my taskbar, which I highly recommend it for every single one of you guys to do, because you'll be using this every single day. But for now, I want you guys to open up a command line interface, right? right? Open up your terminal, and I want you to navigate somewhere where you can use it. And I guess I'll show you guys how to navigate before you guys even do that. But just figure out a way to open up your terminal and have easy access to it.
So if we're on Windows, we should be using the Ubuntu right now.
Correct. You should be using Ubuntu. So the way that it works, Chase, all right, in simple terms, when you guys install Ubuntu, what that does, it creates what we call is a virtual machine, right? And let me draw it out. Right, here is your computer. All right, this is your computer that you have. You can do different things. You have, VS Code. You have your browsers. You have your Minecraft games for you gamers, whatever, right? Word document. You're able to do all this stuff within your computer, right? And all this is saved in this computer. Well, what we did with Ubuntu is we didn't want to have you work on your computer and have your files and all the stuff you're going to have to install throughout the course to somehow interact with the rest of your computer, and there will be conflicts, right? I don't know what you've installed on your computer. I don't know what kind of files you have. And what we did is we essentially installed Ubuntu inside your computer, right? And what that is imagine a version of your computer, but in a small scale inside of it, right? It's like a computer inside of a computer, right? Ubuntu was created somewhere in the corner of your computer, right? Away from everything else. It's within its own little space, almost like a sandbox, right? And in here, this is where we will work, right? Everything that you do in Ubuntu, right, is not going to be the same as everything else on your actual computer, right? These are two different things, right? And we do that so these don't interact, right? So we can work with different files, install different things inside of Ubuntu, but not affect the rest of your computer, right? And we call that a virtual machine because you can't visually see it. It's virtual in there, but we essentially create a small little pocket where you can work and do things and install different things and create files and programs without affecting the rest of your computer. Does that make sense, Chase?
Yeah, so basically, like, it sounds like the computer's like the other things in the computer is not acknowledging that Ubuntu exists or whatever.
Yeah, essentially.
Okay,
Which
yeah,
is
that makes
why
sense.
when you open up your terminal, you have to open up an Ubuntu terminal so you can access this, right? Your regular command prompt is for the rest of your computer. Make sense?
Yeah, that does. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. It's two different remotes, essentially. All right. Okay. So we're going to talk through some commands, which I believe you guys should have already been introduced to. But the first one we're going to talk about is going to be the print working directory, right? Short for PWD. But before I do that, actually, let me go out of order. I want you guys to create a new directory. After you open up your command line, right, I want you to type in ls. ls is going to list out all the different directories. And when I say directories, I mean folders, right? Directories is just a fancy word for folders, right? ls allows you to list all your folders or directories on your terminal. And this is going to show you everything that you have within your terminal at this level. And I say level because it depends on what directory you're on. For example, if I was referencing my VS Code here, and I wanted to get to the README, I have to go into lesson 0 and then access the README, right? So when we talk about levels, we talk about in what level you are in terms of directories, how nested you are into your folders, right? In lesson 01 here, I have this directory called git pair, and there's another readme in here, right? So when we talk about where we are in our terminal, we're referencing the levels of folders and how nested we are going into it, right? For example, right now, if you look at my terminal, I am currently within, let me use pwd. I am within my home folder. Inside of home folder, I am within this user that I have created. This user has another folder called Foundations of Programming. And inside this folder, I have this directory that I created specifically for this class, where it's a copy of the repo, right? This is where I am in my directories, right? The level of how nested I am in my directories. And that's what I refer to when talking about the level that we're at. Here, I have my folders, my directories of different things that I use, my Foundations of Programming course, guide application. I got some other stuff that's relevant right now. And where am I exactly? Well, to figure out where I'm at, we use the command pwd, which stands for print working directory, right? And it essentially is going to show me the level in my directories that I'm within. I am inside of home, inside of the user or the Lagarza 12, and inside this folder, I have all of these things right here, right? Now, to navigate into a directory, we use the command cd, right? And cd is short for change directory, right? I want to change into this test folder that I created earlier, or I cloned the repository. I want to go into it. So I type in the command cd, I press space, and then I type in the directory that I want to change into. And this will allow me to navigate into this folder. Notice that it added that file path onto my directory. I am within test. Right, that / is signifying inside of, that I am inside test, right? I'm nested inside of here. And now if I type ls again to list everything within here, we see here that I no longer get this different list of different directories. The only directory I have in here is FOP, right? Because I listed out all the directories within the current location I am located in, which is test. And that's only FOP. Well, let's go inside of FOP. So you go into FOP, once again, I type in cd, and I say FOP. Notice that my path here changed. It now says /test /FOP. All right, I am nesting myself deeper into my directories, and my path is reflecting that. I can type in ls again, and notice that I now have all the lessons that are currently living within this FOP folder. Right, this is how we figure out where we are at, how to list out everything within a folder, and then how to go inside of a folder. Probably one of the most used commands that you guys will have. Now, what if I don't want to go into this folder, right? If I want to go back up into test, I want to get out of FOP and go to test. Well, to go up one directory, we use the command cd for change directory, space, and we type in ... Right, that's going to let our terminal know, hey, I want to go back up from where I came from, right? Get me out of FOP and take me back up to test. Notice that the path here is reflecting that. It's no longer / FOP. It's now just / test. All right. Now, just like you can change directory one level at a time, you can change directory specifically to a folder if you know the file path, right? Right now, I'm currently within tests. I already know, because I've already seen it, that test has a folder called FOP. And then within this folder, I have a folder called lesson 02, lesson 01, so on and so forth. I can specify the direct path to get there. So I can do CD. And as we already saw, the path to get there is I have to go into home, the Lagarza 12, test, and then so on and so forth. So let's do that. I'm going to go ahead and type it in. Home, Lagarza 12, test. I'm going to go into FOP, and it's going to lesson 01. And when I press enter, it takes me directly to that file path. Type in ls, and I see here I have the readme and git pair. So I'm able to do it with a direct path as well. All right. What I want to go all the way back up to the home directory, right? At the very top, back to where I started. I don't want to keep typing in cd ... and go back up one directory at a time. What you can do is type in cd and then the tilde, right? This little squiggly line. And this will send you all the way back up to the start of where your home directory is at. Right? Let me go ahead and print my working directory. And I'm here within home inside of my R de la Garza 12 folder. All right, this is the start of my home directory. All right. Now, once again, I'm going to go ahead and go back into my FOP folder. You can press the up arrow and you can navigate through all the previous commands you have used most recently, right? So if you don't want to type out that directory again, just press the up arrow and you can figure out which one you were using. I'm within FOP. I'm going to go ahead and list out all my directories. And I'm going to make a new directory here, right? Somewhere that I can mess around with. I'm going to go ahead and use this command that's called make directory, and it's typed in as such, where it's mkdir, right? Which is an abbreviation for make directory, right? In other words, make a folder, right? I'm going to create a new folder, so I'm using the mkdir command. After I call this command, I'm going to press space and type in the name of the folder that I want to create. And I'm going to name it test_folder. And press enter. All right, if I press ls again, I can now see all the folders in here, and my test folder exists. It's at the very end. So I was successful in creating that new folder. Let's go ahead and navigate into that test folder. Test folder. So I'm going to go ahead and do cd test folder. Notice that my file path has changed. I am now within test, FOP, and test folder. If I type ls, I don't get anything back, right? That's because it's a brand new folder and there is no files or other folders within here, right? Now, what if I want to create a file? Well, we saw how to create a directory. You would think that it would be something like make file, but that's not correct. For some reason, the command to create a new file is with the word touch, right? Touch. Touch will allow you to create a new file wherever you are at. After touch, I'm going to go ahead and create the file. I'm going to call it test.py. I don't get anything back, but if I type ls, I now see that there is a file within the directory of test folder. Right, so I was able to create that file successfully. Well, you see me use ls. I was able to see all the files I have. There's some additional flags you can add to this command of ls, right? If you do ls space -l, what this command is going to do is going to show you all the files within the directory with some extra info, right? We see here that we get some weird code here with a bunch of dashes and letters of R and W. We see here we have the owner, right? This right here is it shows you who the owner of this file is. It's my user or the Lagarza 12. It tells you when it was created and then the name of the file. All right, so we get some additional info. You won't really ever use this too much unless you're more like a DevOps type of person. But we're just showing you this so you know that this is available. And now, what about this code here? Well, this is actually the permissions on this file, right? It shows me what I can do to this file. I can read and I can write into this file. I don't remember all the codes. We can honestly just do a quick Google search because I don't know it off the top of my head. I don't use it like that too much. Linux file command code. Let's go permission code. Understanding file permissions. Here we go. Right, so here you can see like the different combinations. You have the 3 dots, dashes, no access. You can only execute if it's just an X, 1 W in the middle, right axis only. I think you get the picture, right? That code right there gives you different permissions. It tells you what type of permissions you have on that file, right? You can change this. We're just not going to cover that in our course. Just be aware that files do have different permissions and you can change the permissions on these files. That is an ability. All right. Just like the -l command, we have another command called -la, which shows you the same thing as the -l, but it'll also show you any hidden files that are within this directory. I'm not quite sure why we have these additional hidden files, if I'm being honest with you, but in case you did decide to hide a specific file, you are able to show those hidden files as well. All right. Well, we talked about navigating through our terminal. We're able to create a new directory. We created a new file, right? We were able to list stuff out from our files, and we were able to see where in our terminal we were at. Well, what if I want to remove this file, right? This file, I no longer need it, this test.py. Well, to remove a file, we use the rm command, which is an abbreviation for remove. All right, so just like when we create a file, we do touch space and the name of the file. Here, we're going to do rm for remove space, and then the name of the file that you're trying to remove, test.py. Now, if I do ls, the file no longer exists within my test folder. All right, well, let's go back level, back up to FOP. I'm going to do ls, and I see all these different directories. I no longer want this folder, test folder. So how do I remove the folder? Well, you would think if I do rm and the name of the folder, you would think it would delete it, but you're going to get an issue. It says rm cannot remove test folder. It is a directory, right? And the reason it does that is because what if there's a bunch of files in here, right? It needs to know how to handle a folder because there might be multiple different files in here. Essentially, it's almost like a second form of protection, so it keeps you from deleting an entire folder with hundreds of files, right? You have to be very specific to how to delete it. Well, you can go through the folder and delete every file individually, or you can kind of force it, right? To delete a folder, we use the rm-r, right? -r, the -r is, if I remember correctly, it stands for recursively, which might be a little out of scope for now to explain the definition of recursion, but essentially what it's doing, it's telling your terminal, hey, I want you to go into this folder and go through every single file in here and remove it, right? As well as the folder itself. So with rm-r, we call the folder. It'll remove that directory form, right? So rm by itself is how you remove a file, but rm-r is how you remove a directory. The -r is essentially just telling your computer how to handle a folder that could potentially have multiple other files or folders in it. Make sense, guys?
Yeah, it makes sense.
I understand I've been going through a lot of these commands. I'm under the assumption here that you guys covered a lot of these. Is that correct?
Yeah, we covered a little bit.
Okay.
Is
All
there a
right.
di- what's the difference between rm/r and rm directory? Or to remove directory?
You mean rm-r and rm, just those two?
Isn't there an rmdir command to remove directory as well?
Not that I'm tracking. At least I've never used it. I could do a quick little search, but now that I'm tracking, let's see. Okay, see, I've never used it. So I guess there is. The rm directory command in Linux removes empty directories from the system.
Okay, so it has to be empty.
Yeah, that's what it looks like. I've never used it. rm-r works for me. So I think I would say rm-r seems to be the most powerful of the both. So I ain't no reason to use rmdir. Just rm-r works fine. You're gonna see me, guys. If at any point there's something that you guys ask and I might not be too familiar with it, I'm not gonna lie to you and try to make us a story. All right, there's so much in technology and software engineering, it is impossible for me to know everything. As well as you guys and any other software developer, people who've been doing this for years, we're constantly always learning. And depending on the job and what you're doing, everyone uses something different, right? You'll see that when you start interviewing or applying to different jobs. You might apply to 20 different places and they might all use different languages, different frameworks, everything. I don't know why we do it so, so different. I wish we could all just come up with a standard and just stick to something, but there's just so much, right? And we don't always use every different part of it. As long as you're familiar and you can find an answer, as long as you know how to find the answer, that's all you need to be successful. And I think that's one of the reasons why us as military, we are able to be so successful in programming, especially if you've been in for a while, you're either a commissioned or a non-commissioned officer. One of the things that we see is that as we get up higher in the echelon, we ended up going to all these leadership courses, and you come to realize that a lot of times they stop teaching us stuff and they start just giving us FMs, like where you can find the answer. I remember when I went through AOC, there is a whole part of AOC, the Advanced Leadership Course, where to become a staff sergeant, where all the entire material is like, hey, this is the FMs to find this is the FMs to find that, and the entire exam for this specific part of the course was literally going through multiple field manuals and finding the answer. They didn't even teach us the information. We had to find it ourselves in the manual. Right. So because of that, I feel like us as leaders, we've gotten really good at finding the answers for things that we don't know. So make sure you guys leverage those skills because you're going to be doing that a lot. It's not uncommon for that. No one expects you to be a computer. We expect you to know how to navigate the the computer. When ChatGPT first came out, there was like this brain joke like, oh, ChatGPT is going to take your job. And as you guys realize, if you guys have been using ChatGPT, if you don't ask ChatGPT the right question, you're not going to get a right answer. Right? Garbage in, garbage out. It's simple as that. If you don't have someone that knows what they're doing to a certain extent, then you're gonna get a bunch of garbage. So if you're knowledgeable enough to find the answer, you can find it, and that's all you need to be successful. So I'm not shy. I'll look it up and I'll tell you I don't know that specific answer, and we'll figure it out together. So that takes care of the RM and RM-R. Another command, which you guys should have already used, and I'm going to use it here, is sudo, right? And sudo stands for super user do. Sudo is essentially you overriding the permissions of something and doing it anyway. Have you guys ever opened up a program on your computer and it says, do you want to run as administrator or something similar to that? That's essentially what you're doing with sudo. All right. There's things that your computer won't allow you to do unless you're the admin. And sudo lets you override that. All right. So it gives you root level permissions. And you encounter this when you're installing stuff. You're probably doing something like, pip install, like let's say Postgres or whatever you were installing, right? The install phase probably told you to do something like sudo pip install or sudo apt install. Right? That's what sudo was doing. It was overriding any kind of permissions and giving you that ability to just go ahead and install it. Right? So sudo is a very powerful command. Make sure you know what the heck you're installing before you use sudo. So you don't install garbage on your computer. All right. The next command that we're going to talk about is the cat command, which I believe stands for concatenate. The cat command allows you to combine and write file content to standard output. Let's see if we can do something like this. I'm going to go ahead. Let's see. Let's make a directory, test directory or test folder. I'm going to create 2 new files, touch test 1.py, touch test 2.py. Let me go ahead and code. I'm going to go ahead and open up this directory with my 2 files. Why are you not in there? Oh, I'm bad. I have to go in there. Rookie mistake. Okay. So notice I was able to create 2 different files on the same line. All you have to do is put a space in there. But here's my folder that I created. I'm sorry if I didn't explain that. I created that test folder again. Inside this test folder, I created 2 new files, test1 and test2. Let's go ahead and do something like print my name is, and then on the other one, we'll do print Roger. And let's see if we can get this working. I don't use this command too often, but we can do something like cat and we'll call test1 file. Oh my bad, put cards. And then we can say test2 file, right? We can tell our terminal, hey, I want to concatenate test1 and test2, these two files here. And I want you to put it into a folder called test3.py, right? So I use an arrow for this. I want to give a quick disclaimer. You do not need to really memorize this. I'm showing you that this command exists and it's available to you. If you ever encounter yourself in a situation where you might need it, it's just familiarizing you with different commands that are out here for Linux. So don't feel like, oh, I don't know what's going on. That's okay. But essentially, I call the cat command, which stands for concatenate. I pass two files that I want to combine together. This greater than arrow here is pretty much pointing towards the file that I want to concatenate it into. And now if I did this correctly, when I run this, I can use ls, and I see here that there is a new file here, right? I can see it in my VS Code, it populated. If I press this file, notice that both of the code in test1 and test2 now exists within this test3 file, right? So the concatenate command, the cat, can combine files together. So just know this is something that is available to you. All right, I'm gonna put a quick pause here. Time is 7:31. Let's go ahead and come back at 7:41, and we'll continue with the rest of the class. All right, welcome back. Sorry. Put you guys on break a little bit too early, but it's okay. My wife was knocking on the door. So before we went on break, we were talking about the cat command. Now let's look at the cat command again. All right, we use cat. We call two different files. We use the greater than arrow to point to a new file, right? We gave it the name that we wanted to call this file, and it created that file with it, with the contents of the other two files. Now, if I do cat and I call test1.py, what this is going to do, it's going to print out the content of the file as well, right? So not only can we concatenate files together, it's going to read and print out to you the content of that file. Now, I understand it's a little weird the way it's printed out. It printed it out and it joined together with my file path. It looks a little off, right? The terminal is not a GUI. It ain't gonna look pretty, right? That's what GUIs are for. A terminal is gonna give you the raw information of stuff, right? If I do cat test_3.py, it does the exact same thing. Notice that this is print my name is, and then print Roger, right? So the content of test3. So cat will also show you the content of a file, right? It will print out the code. We can also pass in some flags. Let's say I'm gonna put this on some new lines. Print world print lemonade. Right, I got 4 different lines of code here. If I do cat, call the name of the file, but between the cat and the name of the file, I add -n, right? This is what we call a flag. What this is going to do, it's going to give me the content of this file, but with the number of the line that the code is in. So we can add almost like optional parameters here, right? To do different things. Right? -n is one of them. I'm not too familiar with any other ones, if I'm being honest with you, but just know that you can do something like this. -n, I'm like 90% sure there's probably at least a couple more. All right, so cat will give you also the content of a file. You can even add optional parameters here. to add stuff like the numbers of the lines of the code, stuff like that, right? So cat, really cool tool, especially if you don't want to open up a whole file, whatever, you just want to see quickly what's in there. All right, let's go ahead and clear this. I don't think I covered that. As you saw, I had a bunch of stuff there. Well, if you want to clear up your terminal so it doesn't show you all that mumbo jumbo, all you have to do is type in the word clear and press enter. It'll clear the entire chat log that you have on your terminal. I wouldn't call it chat log, but like the entire log of commands and outputs. That'll give you back another clean slate of stuff. It does not mean that everything else that you've done up to this point is, undone. It's just going to clear it from your terminal so it's not in the way. All right, still working within this test folder. Another thing that we can do is copy folders or files, right? Let's say I wanted to copy this test_3 file and name it something different. I can say something like CP for copy. I want to copy the test_3 file into a new file called test_4. All right, so I copy the test3 into test4. My test3 is untouched, right? It's by itself. Nothing happened to test3, but a new file was created. Oh no, what happened?
You got an error when you did the command.
Did I? Try. Okay. What's going on? Copy. Oh, I think I know what I did. I think what happened was it's not supposed to use the arrow function. It should be CP, then test3, space, and then the name of the new file. There we go. So no arrow needed. You just name the file you're trying to copy, and then give the second name being the file that you want to create to copy into. And notice that both these are the same. Thank you for that. So my mistake was I added that arrow, that greater than arrow, and does not need it for this command. All right. So we talked about copy. We can do the exact same thing for directories. I'm not going to do that because it's literally the exact same syntax. The name of the directory, and then the second name will be where you want to copy or what you want to call this copy, right? So same syntax. You can do it for both files or folders, right? These are commands. All these commands, the Linux commands, are great Anki cards. So if you want to memorize these and make sure you remember all the good ones, especially starting off, I recommend for the first week or two, definitely do this. Write these down on Anki and try to remember what these commands do. Maybe not exactly how they're written, if maybe that's too much for you right now, but maybe just remembering what the command is and what it does is a good way to start using these whenever you get into the immersive program. So we talked about copying files and directories. Let's talk about moving them. Not necessarily copying, but moving. I'm going to go ahead and move up a folder. Right, I got out of test folder and I went back up to FOP. Right, if I do ls, here is the entire curriculum plus that test folder I created. Let's say I accidentally created a file called test_5.py within this level of my directory, but I intended to make it inside of test folder, right? And when I do ls, I see here that it's not inside test folder, it's within the same level of test folder. It's not in it, but it's on the same level. And that wasn't my intention, right? And I want to move it, right? So if I want to do that, I would use the command mv for move, right? mv for move. Well, what do I want to move, Roger? I want to move my test_5 file. Where do I want to move it to? I want to move it to test_folder. Hopefully this works. I don't know if I need my fat arrow or not. Hey, it did it. All right. Let's do ls again. Oh, it did work. Okay. So notice test 5 is no longer here. But it is in the test folder now. Right? It populated here. I don't have to go in there, but I mean I can if you want. ls, it's in here. It moved it successfully. I thought it was gonna work in case it needed that arrow, but this worked. Sorry, I'm a little rusty on my Linux. But yeah, so we can move files, or we can rename them, right? For example, let's go inside my test folder, cd test underscore folder. Let me clear this up so I don't confuse anybody. I'm inside my test folder. I have test 5. But maybe I made a typo. I wanted this to be test 6. I can use mv. I call the file I want to rename, and then I just give it the new name file. Because this file does not exist and it's not a folder that I'm specifying, it's going to create this and rename it. If we do ls, notice that test 5 is no longer there, but it's now test 6. So because there is no existing directory, it knows that, hey, you're not trying to move this, you're trying to change the name, right? So it's the same syntax, right? But the way you use it differs, so therefore it has a different outcome, right? Earlier, when I try to move a file into a folder, the folder did exist. So because it existed, it moved it in the folder. But right now, when I use the exact same syntax, when it checked for test underscore 6.py, it saw that there was no folder named this. So therefore, it assumed that it meant that I was trying to change the name of this file name. Right. So it's the exact same syntax, but different outcome because of the different setting, I guess, of in what context it was being used in, right? So move can move files in directories, or it can rename them. All right. Let's go ahead, clear this up. I'm gonna go up a level. Notice I am currently within the FOP directory. The next command we're going to talk about is going to be the find method, right? And the find method allows you to find a file somewhere in your code, right? So the way it's going to work is you're going to call the find method, just like everything else we've been doing. You type in find, and there's a couple ways of doing this, right? What I want to do is find all the README files within the FOP directory. Well, to do that, you have to call the command you're trying to use, which is find, and then you have to pass in the file path, right? So I have to give it the file path. Well, I don't know the exact file path off my top of my head, so let me go ahead and type in pwd and get the file path. Okay, here it is. I'm just going to go ahead and copy this. Now that I know the file path, I'm going to say find. I'm going to copy and paste that file path so it knows where to look, right? And what I'm going to look for is for a file with the name of something, right? Well, I have to specify that it's the name of the file. So I use -name. This lets my find command know that whatever I pass in after name is supposed to be the name of the file. And I'm looking for a file called readme.md. Notice that the file name is put in double quotation marks, right? That's how it knows that this is supposed to be essentially a name or a character, a string in a sense, that it should use to look for this file. Now, it's going to look, if I remember correctly, for everything, right, with the name of readme.md within my FOP directory. And if I press enter, we see here that it listed out all the different readmes, and you can see they're all readmes, right? And it shows me the file path of where they're located at, right? The FOP directory inside of lesson 12, inside of the anagrams directory, there's your readme. So it tells you the file path of every single readme within FOP. Now, let me go ahead and clear this. Let's do that again. But this time, I'm going to change the name to test_1.py. And notice that it was able to find that test file I created within the test folder. And it gave me back the file path for it. So another very useful command.
On that, I mean, I assume like in this instance, you know, kind of the general file area you're looking for, whether it's the home slash your name slash test slash FOP. But if you're just trying to look through like the whole like home slash and then your name, would that also search all the files under your profile or your directory?
Yeah, so if you want to search all directories, if I remember correctly, it's find and then a dot. It's gonna say
Okay.
find all. Then let's do dash name. Don't. Let's not say okay yet, so we see that it works.
Okay,
And
that makes
yeah,
sense.
it found it, but notice that it says ./test folder test.py. What if I do find home and then I specify my user and then I say dash name test_1.py. No such file or directory. What are you talking about, Willis? It's having some issues with my file path for some reason. Give me a second. Let me see. Find /home dash name.
I think it's just a typo on Barzo.
Oh, thank you. This is why I couldn't code along in the class. See what I'm saying? There we go. I press enter and it's taking a while, right? Because I have a lot. This right here, it's just blinking. It's looking for it, but it's gonna take its sweet time because how many files it has to look for, right? This is the same thing as opening up your file explorer and typing in the search bar at the top right to look for a file. I'm not gonna do that because I got files that I want to show you guys. But notice that here I got the location for test 1, right? So I would open mine up and show you, but I got a bunch of different downloads of games and whatnot. Ain't no need for that. You guys can go ahead and try it out on your directory on the top right. I want you to go ahead and type in, for that file. And it's going to take a long time to load, right? If you've ever done it, it stays there for like 30 seconds to a minute, and you see the loading on the very top, and it slowly starts showing you everything. That's essentially what my terminal just did, right? Going back to what I mentioned, the command line interface and the GUI are practically the same thing. You can do everything you do in your GUI and your CLI, except the CLI gives you more flexibility, I guess, or I guess the left and right limits are a lot greater than your GUI, right? There's not as much functionality, right? Your CLI can do a lot. It's just not very user friendly, right? Because when you look at this, this is a little intimidating because you don't know how to even navigate this. This is not for the normal day-to-day person, which is why we have GUIs, right? So that takes care of fine. The next one we're going to talk about is going to be grep. Now, grep, it's very similar to find, but if I remember correctly, find, it works for a file where grep allows you to search keywords in the files, right? for example, if I do something like this, right? Let's go ahead and do, I'm gonna call the command grep, G-R-E-P. And I want to look for the pattern name. And then I do the file path. Oh man, I cannot type to save my life today. Let's see if this works. I don't use this too often. Okay. Let's go ahead. I'm gonna go ahead and do something like this. First and foremost, let me get my working directory. CD into FOP. Okay, I want to grab. I want to see if the word name exists in this file, right? And we're looking specifically in a file, right? Right now, this file is just 4 lines long, right? But when you guys start working with your own code, you're going to encounter that some of your programs are going to be hundreds of lines long, hundreds. And to look through all your code of hundreds of lines, it can be very time intensive, right? So how do we check if something exists in this file? Well, we can use the word grep. So I'm going to use grep. I want to look for the word name. And I want to check inside of home, test, FOP, test folder, and test underscore 4.py. Right, I essentially just added the file path for this file right here. So grep is going to go through this file and see if the pattern of name exists. I put Greg instead of grep. Let's try it. There we go. And it prints out the line my name is, right? It was able to find it successfully and it returned to me where it was at. Right? Now, what if I do something like this? What if I do grep? I believe we could use the -R. And what this is going to do, it's going to allow me to look through all the files and directories, or essentially all the files in a directory. So I can do something like name, and then let's go ahead and grab the directory test folder. And with the -R, it should be able to go into a folder and go through all the files, not just one, and find what files have the pattern of name. And we see here that the file test3, test1, and test4 all have the pattern of name in it. And it gives me the line. Right? So we're able to check a specific file, or we could check a folder with multiple files using the -R. So 2 different ways of doing it. Do I have any questions on the find or the grep method?
So you're checking the content essentially when you say you're looking for name as far as like
Correct.
my name is.
Correct.
Not
I'm
just the
checking
file.
the content.
Yeah, not just the name, but the content. Yeah. Okay.
Yes. Find was checking for the file name, and grep checks the content of the file. Make sense?
I also noticed when I was using the find method, I had a folder, that didn't have the underscore between the words. It was Zulu code Platoon, with spaces in between, and the find wasn't working, and I realized it was because it was 3 words as opposed to like, 1 word, for the
Yeah.
keyword.
You want to use underscores or dashes. Good naming convention. I tend to like to have everything just lowercase like this. This works fine. For big stuff, I do like FOP. I just did it like that because I don't have multiple of them. I just have one FOP folder. But like for example, all these folders here are all lesson underscore 06. Just having good naming conventions can help you not encounter issues like that if you're working with your command line interface a lot and you're looking through files and manipulating files. All right. The next method there is, which I talked about earlier, but I didn't discuss it, is the change mod. I don't remember what the mod stands for. Moderator? I'm not quite sure. But the chmod command here allows you to change a file's read, write, and execution permissions, right? So going back to the ls command, right, where I did ls, let's go into folder, let's do dash l. I want to list everything out within my test folder, and then I want to use the dash L to get all the info, the extra info in my files, right? We saw this right here, this code, right? And we talked about that. These are the permissions for this file. Well, to change them, you use the chmod method, right? I'm not too experienced with this. I've only had to do it once or twice. But essentially, the way that it would work, you would do something like chmod, and then you would create the pattern that you're trying to make. Like, for example, we see here dash rw, right? If I wanted to do dash w dash, and then I would call the file, let's say task underscore one dot py. Actually, let me just run it. Okay, I know why I was doing that. I need to go into that directory. My bad. CD test. I think that's correct. Let's do it again. Okay, right. So I ran it. I was not inside the directory of test folder, so it gave me an issue. Right. Notice that right here, I'm in FOP directory, but I'm not inside of the test folder. Right? Because when I checked the content of the test folder, I wasn't in it. So when I tried to change it, it gave me an error. You cannot access test underscore one. Because when you run a command, it's going to run it at the same level that you are at unless you specify the file path, which I did not. So I went into the test folder. I run the method again. And if I list everything out again, the test one, okay, it changed, right? Here's what test one originally had, RW. Notice that it no longer has that W. I'm not exactly sure which dash does what. I would have to remember or look it up. I don't know off the top of my head the combo. I mean, this is a combination, so it's like a locker combo type of thing. But as you saw here, I was able to successfully change the permissions of that file, right? So I use the chmod method. You pass in whatever combo you're trying to update, and then you pass in the name of the file. That was a small demo. I'm not too experienced with this one. I don't ever really use it. I've used it a handful of times, but it was a very specific case. The biggest point of showing you guys this is to show you that this is possible and there's a way of doing it. Do I have any questions on anything we covered so far? If you hear my kid yelling in the background, please ignore it. He's fighting with my dog. They do that very often. All right. So we have a couple more methods, and we're going to go ahead and move forward. The next method is going to be the ping method. Right? This is a command that lets you check if a network or server is reachable. I can check, for example, if I use ping, you pass in what network or server you're trying to reach. We'll use google.com. And we see here that it's going to ping Google, and it shows me that it's up and running. I'm going to go ahead and stop that. But I was able to ping the Google server, and we got a response. So I know it's up. I've actually never tried it on my own website, cyberhire.net. Let's check it out. Oh no, what's going on? Okay, I don't know why it's not working. Let's try facebook.com. ping. What is going on? Control C. Okay, no, it was pinging it. My bad. It did ping it. It just wasn't giving me the same thing as Google. Let's do Facebook. I wonder why it's giving multiple of these pings. I have to look into why it's doing it in that way. 10 packets transmitted. Okay. So notice that the same response I got for Facebook, I got it back from my own website too. It's just that it wasn't constantly pinging it. And I wonder why it constantly pings Facebook, but it wasn't doing it for mine. 9 packets transmitted. Yeah. So you can ping a website to see if that's running or not. All right, nothing too crazy. Just know that's accessible to you. The next method is history. This is a very easy one. You just type in history, and it gives you a record of all the commands that have been used recently. I don't know how far back it goes or when it resets. But these are all the commands I've been using within like this last week, from what I can see from some of the stuff that I'm reading here. So history will allow you to go back and check what commands you have read. This is very helpful, especially if you're trying to install things or navigate through your console and you don't know what went wrong or what you did, what command you actually ran. History allows you to see that. And the next one will be echo. Echo just allows you to echo something, like, for example, hello. Not too useful, but just know that you can do something like that. You can also, if I remember correctly, you can open up a Python terminal here. If I type in Python, notice here that it starts an instance of Python, and I can actually run Python code from my terminal. I can say my name is equal to, let's say, Jason. I press enter. It doesn't show anything specifically here, but if I do print my name, notice that it prints out Jason. So I'm able to do Python code in my terminal as well. I can say my name 2 is equal to Tim. Print hello. And then let's do this. My name 2. Let's add a space here. Hello, Jason and Tim, right? So, some basic Python stuff here. If I wanted to, I could import different things. I can import functions. I can do a lot more. Everything that I could do in VS Code with Python code, I can essentially do it here. The only downside is that you don't see in real time your code like you would when you're writing the script, right? You have that document there in a sense. But you can do that here. And to exit from here, you press Control C, right? Oh, my bad. That's something else that I'm thinking about. It's exit, open and close parentheses. And that exits out of your Python session. I think if I do Node, it'll do something similar. Yeah, Node as well. Node will start a JavaScript session, right? Let name is equal to Jason. Let's look up why console log name Jason. Okay, I don't know why I'm getting this undefined stuff, but notice that Jason was saved because when I console.log name, it printed out Jason. I don't know where this is coming from, but I can start a session like this as well per node. Notice that when I try to type in exit, it didn't leave the JavaScript or the node session. It wants me to exit out in a different manner. To exit, press Control C again, and there you go. So they have their own way of how they work, but you can do that. That's one way of working with your terminal. And I show that because when you get into the immersive program or any of the programs and you work with Django, you're gonna have to work with a session very similar to that, where you open up a Python session to write some code. And one thing to note, if I go back in here and I try to print out name, it's not going to print anything out. I'm gonna get an error, right? Because that session only existed within there, right? When I closed out that session, I no longer had access to the variables that were declared, because when I exited out, it cleared everything. All right, so just be aware of that. We talked about the clear method that clears your terminal. You might have seen me do stuff like, or I do CD and I start typing and I press tab. Maybe that's not a good example. Let's go ahead and go here. CD found, right? I start typing foundations of programming, but I don't finish it, and I press tab, it'll autocomplete, right? So you can autocomplete as well, so you don't have to type everything out. If there are multiple files that have similar of that name, it's might give you an issue. For example, if we go into the foundations of programming directory, right? Notice that I try a CD, I did FOP dash, and I pressed tab and enter, but it didn't work. I'm pressing it right now, and it's not going into anything. It actually, it's even giving me the directories that I can choose from, because it doesn't know how to complete this, because both of these start with FOP dash. So it won't work if they're the same. You have to get to a character that starts being a little bit different. Like, for example, if I type in J and then I press tab, then it auto completes, because there's only one FOP dash J. Right, so just be aware of that. Control C terminates a running command. For example, let's go ahead and open up Python again. And I'm going to say, let counter equals 0. Oh, my bad. That's JavaScript. Oops. Let's go ahead and exit out real quick so I can clear this up. I'm going to say counter equals 0 and say, wow, counter is less than 5. Print I'm less than 5. Let's see if this works. And I think maybe it's giving me an issue. Or was it running? Oh, well. I think it's running, which is why it's giving me this. But I stopped it, right? And you see here, it says keyboard interrupt, right? So I stopped whatever was running, right? Let's run that again. It has these dots. And the reason it has these dots is because if you look at this, what is this? What is this code doing?
It's a loop.
Yeah, it's a loop, right? I'm saying, while the counter, which is 0, is less than 5, I want you to print I'm less than 5. Notice that I never increase my counter. It never reaches the value of 5. So this is going to continue running, and that's what it's doing. It's giving me issues here because it's a Python session. It's not exactly like VS Code, but I know it is running. You can see it blinking. It's doing something. Because it's a Python session in my terminal, I'm not visually seeing print I'm less than 5, but it is working. It's doing something. And you can do Control C to interrupt that session, and it stops running it. I feel like this will make a little bit more sense if I do it here. If I say count is equal to 5, while count is less than 5, print I'm less than 5. And if I run this, Python test 4, what's going on? What are you doing? Is this test 4 right?
Count be less than 5 instead of 5.
Oh, my bad. You're right. It's late. There you go. So it's printing out, right? It's doing what it's saying. To stop this from happening, you do Control C, and that'll interrupt. Now it's noted that we're getting once again the keyboard interrupt method. So I know it was working. It just because it's a terminal, it's not exactly like a GUI. You don't see all this fancy stuff. It's not as visually it doesn't show you visually as good as VS Code does because it's not a GUI, right? It's your CLI. But you can stop something from running by using Control C. Let's see. Another thing that you might encounter is what happens if you have a file that has permissions that keeps you from deleting it. And you'll run into that. Let me go ahead and go into my test folder. This folder isn't protected. So if I do rm-r test folder, this will work, right? But in a situation where you encounter a folder that you know it's trash, you don't need it, you got to get rid of it, but there's some kind of restrictions on it that you can't delete it, you can force it to do what you want by doing -rf. And it'll do the exact same thing. It'll force delete your folder. All right. So both work. Use this sparingly. Don't just -rf everything that you encounter if you don't know what it is. And that's going to conclude all our command line interfaces that we are going to cover. Do I have any questions on anything that we've touched on so far?
As we use like the Ubuntu, like if we're on Windows, obviously, we have all these files like we can create, and then when we close it out and like reopen it the next day, it's still all going to be there, right? I feel like that's a dumb question, but
Yes, it'll be there.
Okay.
It'll be in the Ubuntu, right? Don't try to open up your document on your regular computer and think it's going to be there. It's not going to be there. It's in its own location. For example, I don't really want to do it. Oh, I deleted it. Oh well. Let me see if I can do this off screen. Stand by. Okay, I can't do it here. That's fine. But yeah, a short answer is yes, it'll still be there. Right? You just have to open it with Ubuntu, right? Open up your Ubuntu session and then open it there with code, right? Too easy?
okay. So do you recommend we put like the GitHub repository in our like Ubuntu, like
Yes.
you did? Okay.
Yes, that's exactly how you should do everything on, like from here on out. When you clone the GitHub repository for foundations of programming, the immersive program, DevOps, whatever program you're going to, that's what you're going to be expected to do. You're going to open up your Ubuntu terminal or whatever terminal you're working on, whatever your virtual machine is set up. And then you're going to make a directory and clone it in there, right? When I get ready for class, when I'm going to teach you guys, that's exactly what I'm doing, right? I'm coming into my terminal. I opened it up. I'm going into my foundations of programming directory, and then I type in code FOP-Jan-2025. I made this right before class, right? And then I open it up, and I get ready for class. That's it, right? Let me try this again real quick. Stand by. I'm gonna see if this works now, so I can show you. Okay, there we go. It's working. Let me share my screen. Okay, so I opened it up, right? It has the folder. Notice here it says Weasel Ubuntu, right? It's not my actual computer. If I right click this folder right here and I put reveal in file explorer, it's going to open up this. And notice, look at the file path of this. It goes into network, weasel.localhost, Ubuntu. Then it goes to home, my user, foundation programming, FOP, Jan 2025. Look, this is not in documents, right? This is not on my desktop. This is not even in my PC. I had to go into this folder called network, go into the Weasel that was installed during the install fest. It went into this Ubuntu, right? As I mentioned to you guys before, Ubuntu, or essentially your virtual machine, it's just a small little section in the corner of your computer, away from all your other documents, right? So it's easier if you open up an Ubuntu session for your Windows dudes, and then navigate through there, because Ubuntu should be already formatted to start off somewhere like this, where you're at your user, right? The install of it should have gone you up to that point. So every time you start an Ubuntu session, it should start there. If it doesn't, let me know and we'll figure it out, right? But that's how you get into this little pocket of Ubuntu that's away from everything else. Make sense?
Yep, thanks.
No problem. All right. Let's continue with the rest of class. We only got 30 minutes left, and we got a little bit more. I'm going to try to push through, guys. I hope that's okay. We're doing great on time. This is tomorrow's class. Typically, that's kind of what happens. I teach both these classes the same day, because what happened was Gavin before, he wouldn't do install fest, but now he's doing install fest for all you pre-work cats. So it makes it easier on us, which gives more time for everything else. Which that means we can probably start HTML and CSS pretty early on in the week. We could probably start HTML tomorrow, more than likely, which is good. But here we go. We have the next part of the class on GitHub. What is Git? Who can tell me what Git is? In their own words.
From what I've like read and talked to some of my friends who are software engineers, it just kind of seems like I don't think it's the right word, but like a cloud service where multiple people can make changes to the same code.
Yeah, in a sense, right? It's essentially someone's freaking computer in their attic, right? Not literally, but somewhere, some big location, and there's a bunch of servers that's holding the copies of our code, right? And then other people can go into this website to grab copies, very similar to how you guys just did today, where you copy the repository and then copy that and download it onto your computer, right? So that's kind of what it's doing. But GitHub or Git, in a sense, is what's known as a version control, right? A local version control system that is used to track changes to files, right? Imagine, think about it this way. Remember 15 years ago when you're in school and you're writing a paper, right? You're writing a paper at school, but you probably didn't have a US what you call it? What's the word I'm looking for? Yeah, imagine you're in school, you're trying to write a paper, but you don't finish it. Let's say you're running out of time. School's about to close. You're in the library and you gotta go home, but you just wrote half of your paper, your project paper on this computer. How are you gonna get it home? Well, before we had to save it to a USB or a flash drive, a floppy disk, right? And then bring it back to our house, put it in, and then open it from there, right? Doesn't that suck? Then every single time you just create a copy of it. Maybe your first draft you create a copy of it and you say final draft version 1, right? But then you always make updates, so you go back to your like final draft version 2, something like that, until you finally get a finished product, right? That's how stuff was done in the past. What Git and GitHub does for you, and we'll talk about the differences in a bit, is it allows you to save your project, your work, your files in some kind of cloud, in a sense, a form of a cloud service, right? And it keeps a log and it keeps track of the different versions that it's going to, right? And it lets you make changes and updates while still keeping the authenticity of the original one, or like the original format of the original one. And we'll explain that in a bit. Right? It also allows you to collaborate with other people so they can also use your work and maybe help you with it. They might provide their own changes and their own updates, right? It helps you work in groups where everyone has access to the same project, but also be able to branch off into other features in this project, right? Let's say we were all building a website. Jason's building the user interface, right? Chase is building the homepage. Tim is building the gallery. Rachel is building the I don't know the actual market or the shop itself in our our little Etsy shop or whatever we're talking about here, right? We're just creating different features, but how do we all come together and collaborate without us messing up code? Like, let's say Jason is working on 2 versions that ago, and he doesn't have the updated version. How will we do that? We'll get around all that. Here we have a nice little diagram or picture of what it kind of looks like, right? And we'll talk a little bit more about this. These green dots, this green line with the green dots, represents the master branch, right? And that's what we call it. Really, think of it like a tree, right? The main tree, the main component where the main project is at, that's like our trunk, right? That's the trunk of the tree. That's the actual main project. That's where all the files and folders we have of what our project should be. But let's say Jason wanted to create maybe a new feature on a new page on the same website, right? But he needed to essentially work on the website, but without actually impacting our original work. In a sense, he should make a copy, right? Work on the copy, and then we can use that updated version as the new main version, right? And that's what Git allows us to do. It allows us to branch off, right, from the original project, make some new feature, and then merge it back into the original, right? So you're able to branch off, do some work on the side, and then bring it all together and merge it, right? And that's what Git allows us to do. Right? Why do we use Git? We talked about it, right? Creating different versions of stuff, having to email it to yourself so you can continue to work on it from home, or stuff like that. Creating different versions to make sure you can update it without messing up the original. That's what Git allows us to do for us. Git solves all those problems. It provides save points and possible backups of your code should you need them. Here, so now to the structure example, I'm gonna go ahead and draw it out first before I actually do this. I have a website, and you saw it earlier, that I love doing. It's called TL Draw. It's such a whiteboard where I can draw for y'all. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna create a description of what it should look like. This is this represents the timeline, in a sense, of our project, right? This is the start, and this is the end, right? Project timeline. At the start here, we don't have anything going on for us, right? We have, switch this up, shape to a circle. Right, at the very start, we have basic files, right? No real code in it. By the end of this project, oh Lord, we have a finished product, right? Let's do something like homepage. Homepage, gallery, login, sign up. These are different pages that our website has. Homepage, gallery, login, sign up, the store, right? Our finished project has all these different pages in it, and all these different pages have different features in it. But when we first started off, all we had was the homepage, right? When we started off, we only had one file. We had just a homepage. By the end of it, somewhere along the line, from start to end, we created all these features, right? Well, let's say throughout this timeline, at some point, we're like, hey, you know what? I want to add a login to my application. So Jason decides to do that. So what he does is he creates a copy of the original. He creates a copy of the original application, and he adds a login page. With this copy, he does not impact the original project. The homepage still exists. It's on GitHub, right? He created a copy of the main project. He added a new file into it. And once it was complete, what he does is he merges it, right? He merges it. And at this point in the timeline, we now have a homepage and login. At no point did he ever actually make any changes to the homepage. And what this allowed us to do is make changes to our project without directly impacting the project itself. Because what happens if Jason starts working on this and he messes something up? He deletes a piece of code that's fundamental to the application and it breaks it, right? And then when it comes to deploying the site, and now users can't log in, our website is down, right? We're losing money. People are being called in back from work to make sure we get the website back up. To avoid that, we use some form of version control, very similar to this, to create copies, make some changes to it, and then merge it back. And at some point during the merge, and you'll see this with GitHub, GitHub allows you to compare your original project, your changes, and merge them together. GitHub sometimes is smart enough to identify if there's a conflict between the change and the original, where let's say there's something that's contradicting itself and there might be an issue, but it's not always perfect. It's sometimes going to miss something. So GitHub allows you the opportunity to have people review your code, make sure everything looks right, and then approves a merge before you merge it together. Right? So Git and GitHub allows you to keep different versions of your project to make updates, therefore keeping a log of the changes, being able to contribute with other people, and have a finished product that isn't broken, right? So it allows collaboration and keeping save points of your project without breaking anything. Does that make sense to y'all?
Yeah,
All
that
right.
makes sense.
So I'm gonna go to my profile. This is my GitHub profile. I'm gonna go and create a new repository, and I recommend you guys code along. So if you don't have GitHub open, go ahead and do that now. I'll give you guys a minute. All right, thumbs up once you're good. All right, I only got 2 cameras on, so I'm gonna go ahead with you guys.
Good, yeah.
All right, right on. So once you're here, you're gonna go to repositories, and I have a couple here that I've used for examples. In here, you're gonna create a new repository. It's gonna bring you to this page. You're gonna choose the owner. You guys, it should just be you guys. So just click on yourself. You're gonna give it a name. And I'm gonna call this test. You guys can do that too. Test 1. Just so you guys can practice more. You can add description for your project, right? This is gonna be a big project. You can do something like a portfolio website, right? Something like that, whatever you want to call it. You can make it public or you can make it private. Pretty much letting people see it or not. Who can see the commit history, the changes you've been making or whatever. You can just keep it at public. We're not doing anything crazy here. I recommend you add a README, right? This is where you can write a long description for your project. You've kind of seen that a little bit within the curriculum. That's kind of where I added the instructions for what's going to happen. And most of these are just READMEs, and they have links to different places. As we get deeper into our curriculum, we have some other pages. But when you create a new repo, you can add a README. You can add READMEs at any point. They're essentially instructions, right? Usually explaining what the project has, right? How to install the project, how to use it, right? That's what a README is for. So you want to add a README. You're given the option to add a get ignore. And in short, a get ignore file, because that's what it is. It is a file. It is a file that you add to your repository. So when you go to upload your project onto the repository, you can specify what files you want GitHub to not upload. And that's very important, right? Because when you start working with your application, and you'll come to find this out later throughout our course, there's some things that you're going to have like keys or passwords for your project, essentially, that you need for your project to work, but you don't want to send it up onto GitHub. Right, because now other people will have access to those keys or passwords, and you don't want those to be out in the public. There's actual people out there that create applications that scrub GitHub for keywords like key, so they can get people's keys. And we'll talk more about it. It'll make a little bit more sense once we actually get into APIs. But you want to always add a get ignore file. So you can add that in there. You don't need that right now, right? Because we're not going to be doing anything crazy, but you can add a get ignore, right? Or you can create one yourself. And then you can choose a license. I've never really dabbled with these, so don't worry too much about it. Essentially, it just tells others what they can and can't do with your code, right? Especially if you don't want people stealing your code or whatever and using it for profit, but we're not there yet. Next, you can also set what your main branch should be like, right? This is your main project. I'm gonna just keep it as the default, but once you're done, you're gonna create that repository. And it should bring you somewhere very similar to this. Does anybody have any questions so far about what we have done? This is essentially how I created that repository for a curriculum, right? Very similar to this. All right. Let's go ahead and see how we can connect this to something on our computer. Well, I want you guys to open up your terminal. Somewhere, I want you to make a new directory so we can test out this new repository. I still have that test directory, so I'm gonna go ahead and go in there. Now, once you have it, I'm gonna show you guys how you can connect a repository you created on GitHub to your computer. So once it's created here, what you're going to do is you're going to copy the URL from the code, just like you did earlier today. Back to your terminal, wherever you created this directory, where you're going to add your repo, I want you to clone it in there. Right, so I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna say, let's make directory example repo. I'm gonna go ahead and go inside of it. There's nothing in here. And I'm gonna do git clone, and I'm gonna copy that URL to that new repository that I created. All right, once you're there, I want you to do code. Actually, let me do ls to see what it's called, right? Notice that it named it the same name that repository was called on GitHub. It's called test. That's what I called that repo. So now I'm going to type in code space test so I can open up that repository on my local machine, just like you did with the curriculum. It opens it up. Notice I have the README here. Now in here, the README shows exactly what I added on there, a portfolio website. There's nothing else inside this README. Down here, in your terminal, you're going to initialize a Git session, right? You're pretty much telling your terminal, hey, I want to start tracking changes that I am making within the directory where I am located at, right? I'm currently located within test, right? Test, notice that when I do ls to list out the directories and files, the only thing I have in here is the README. I'm gonna say git init, right? The git init command is going to initialize a Git session, right? What a Git session is, essentially it starts recording or tracking any changes that you are making within here. I don't know why it says reinitializing because I have not done it, but it should say initializing a new Git repository or something very similar to that. We have a command called git remote -v. And when you press enter, it's going to tell you where it's linking it to. Notice that it's saying that the origin of this repository is located at github.com r/12/test.git. That's correct. I want you to type in git branch. What the command git branch does for you, it allows you to see what kind of branches you have in your Git session. Now, I want to point something out. This Git session is not the same as this, right? And you're going to see that in a moment. The repo on GitHub only has the main branch, which technically, so does the one on my computer. They're fairly accurate. Let me see. Let me close out other stuff. I have a bunch of VS Code open. Okay. They're pretty much the same, right? But I'm going to show you how they're different, right? Within this terminal, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the command git check out -b. What this is telling your terminal is, hey, I want to create a new branch, right? By creating it, it uses the keyword checkout. Think of it as checking out a new book or something, right? We're checking out a new branch. That's what the -b is. It stands for branch. We're checking out a brand new branch. And after the -b, I want you to name it something. I'm going to call this test branch. Test_branch. So to create a new branch, you use git checkout -b test branch. And when I press enter, I get the result of switch to a new branch, test branch. Well, let's go ahead and type in git branch again.
Can you share your screen again?
Am I not sharing?
I can see it.
Let me stop sharing and reshare it just in case. I'm gonna zoom in too so you guys can see. I use git branch to check the branches I have. I only had main. I then use the command git checkout -b to create a new branch, and then I pass in the name of that branch. Notice that it created and it switched me automatically to that branch. And how can I check? How can I double check that I'm actually within this branch? Well, I can use the git branch command again. And now it shows me my branches. And notice I got two branches, main and test branch, the branch that I created. But if I come to my repository on my GitHub and I refresh it, and I check right here, this right here, this dropdown checks the branches that I have. Notice that there's only one branch here, and that is main. Because GitHub is different than the Git on your computer. And that brings me to the next part of this class. What is GitHub and what is Git? Well, GitHub is what I like to call the remote repository, right? That's what's on the website. They keep track of stuff. But when you clone something to your computer, the only thing that's tracking what's on your computer at that moment is only your computer, right? There is your remote repository and your local repository. The remote repository is the one on GitHub, on the website GitHub. This is your remote, right? Because it's somewhere remote away from us. Locally, what we have access to is what I have downloaded and created on my computer, right? This is your local repository. You created a copy of what's in the remote GitHub onto your local machine, right? So this right here is different than the Git on GitHub. When I initialized Git right here by typing in Git init, it created a Git session on my computer. But my Git session is not the exact same thing as the remote GitHub on the computer, on the browser. Does that make sense with you guys so far? Okay. Well, now that I'm within this branch, I can start working. And the reason I created a new branch and switched to it is because you never want to work on your main branch, right? The point of GitHub as a version control is to be able to create almost like a different path to a copy of your main branch so you can work on that and then merge it into your main. Notice that when I change to my test branch, I still have access to this. But the contents of these files are going to be different than my main branch. And you're going to see that in action. Within my README, I'm going to change something in here. I'm going to say, I am currently within my test branch. And I'm going to save it. Right? I have made a change to my code. while I am within my test branch. Now, the next step is actually sending this up to GitHub. The next two commands are how you stage it, prepare it, and send it to GitHub. You're going to do git add space dot. What git add is going to do is going to stage it somewhere to prepare it to ship it out to GitHub. Notice that I'm not getting any response back. That's good, right? It worked, but you don't visually see anything. Just know that when you use git add, you're putting it in a staging area to get it ready to send it out. The dot just means all. I want to add all the files that I've changed to the staging area. Make sense? Now that they're in the staging area, you can keep doing this and keep making changes to your code, right? As you're making new changes, you can keep adding them to the staging area. Once you are done and you're ready to send this up, you're going to use the command git commit. I'm committing these changes up to my main branch. After you type in git commit, you're going to use a command called -m to create a message whenever you commit this. And it'll all make sense a little bit. We'll recap this. After you type in -m, you're going to open up some quotation marks and you're going to add whatever message you want to add. It has to be something brief, just letting your GitHub know what was done here. I added a new line to README. And then you're going to close it up with another quotation marks. Once you're ready, you press enter. Notice that you get a response like this where you say one file change, and I have 2 insertions. I added something new. I'm not quite sure why it says 2 if I only added 1 line, but 2 things were inserted. If I use the command git status, git log. Okay, there we go. Git log, it lets me see the logs of the different commits I've done. Here's that last commit I just did. I added a new line to remote. It's saying it's to the test branch. Not important, I just wanted to show you that real quick. But once you're done and you're ready to send this up, you're going to use the command git push. And we're going to get an issue here, and we'll talk about that issue in a second. But now that we have staged everything to the staging area, we've packaged it up and are ready to send it up. Now we actually have to push it upwards to the remote repository. And when I press enter, I get an issue here. It says the current branch, test branch, has no upstream branch. Right? What does that mean? Well, I'm trying to push it to GitHub within my test branch, but on the upstream, it's referring to my remote repository. There is no test branch. Nothing exists here, right? Because the test branch only exists within my local repository. And it gives me a command to push the current branch and set the remote as upstream. Use git push -- set upstream origin test branch. Literally, all you have to do is copy and paste this or type it out. And what this is going to do, it's creating a branch at your origin. It's going to call it test branch, and it's going to connect your test branch that you have here locally to that test branch you have in your remote. And when I press enter, it goes through the process. Notice it says branch, test branch, set up to track remote branch, test branch from origin. Now let's check it up here. And we now see here something happened on my remote repository. It said that test branch had recent pushes 2 seconds ago. If I refresh this page and I open up my branches on my remote, I now have that test branch on my remote repository. What we did is we connected our local repository to our remote repository to 2 branches called test branch. I got 2 minutes left for you guys, so let me go ahead and kind of power through this. We now have a message saying that the test branch had a recent pushes, right? We sent a new change up here. So I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna compare and pull request. It's gonna create a request to merge these branches. You see here that this request, I'm able to add a title and add a description. In this description, you want to describe what changes were made during this push. And you can do something like added a new line to README, made changes, whatever you want to add in here, everything that was created, you add here on the description. Right? And you scroll down, you can see the files that were impacted. On the left side, you see what the main branch has. On the right side, you see what the test branch has. Well, how are these specified? Well, up here, you see here, this little part right here. It's saying that the test branch, I'm trying to merge it, and I can tell by that arrow into my main branch. And it checked it out for me. It's telling me that I'm able to merge. So far, I don't have any issues conflicting with my main branch. And it's saying that I'm good to go. So I can create a pull request. And it's going to bring me to this window where it shows the pull request that I created. And if you had other people that were contributing to this, you can add a reviewer to review your request and approve it. But I don't have anybody on my project. So I'm just going to go ahead and merge the pull request. And we're going to recap this tomorrow because I know we're going pretty quick. We're running out of time. We'll recap this tomorrow. But I can press merge pull request. It's going to tell me to confirm the merge. And we now see pull request successfully merged and closed. Now, if I go back to my repository, I am currently within my main branch. And notice that my main branch now has the changes that I made. Right? I was able to merge that branch into my main branch. And I'm going to stop there because we are running out of time. We're out of time, actually. And I'm going to stop the recording.